Hey guys, tonight we're going to step into another time. A slower, rougher, dustier time. The kind of history that doesn't sparkle on postcards or triumph in textbooks, but lingers in the small details, the smell of damp wool, the scratch of unwashed sheets, the quiet endurance of people who made it through days that were equal parts uncomfortable and ordinary. This isn't a story of kings or queens. It's a story of the little rituals, the routines, the ways people survived from one sunrise to the next. Before we dive in, take a moment to set yourself up. Dim the lights if you can. Maybe turn on a fan for that steady hum, or let a candle burn low in the corner, the flame flickering in rhythm with your breathing. If you're lying down, ease yourself into the pillow and let the weight of the day slide off your shoulders. Tonight's journey isn't meant to energize you. It's meant to loosen your grip, to help your thoughts drift and your body soften into rest. And if you're new here, welcome. If you've wandered with me before, welcome back. I always picture listeners scattered all across the world. Some of you might be in high-rise apartments, where the glow of city lights seeps in through the curtains. Others might be tucked into cottages, surrounded by fields or woods, the night outside thick and quiet. Some of you might be listening in transit, a hotel room in a city you don't quite know, earbuds in, carrying a piece of calm wherever you go. Wherever you are, I'm grateful you've chosen to spend this stretch of time here. And if you find these slow wanderings through history help you rest, feel free to subscribe, but only if you genuinely want to. That way, we can share many more nights together, candlelit and unhurried. Now, let's breathe a little slower. Let the day that just passed fall gently into the background. Picture yourself setting aside all the little lists and worries, the obligations waiting on your desk or in your inbox. For now, they don't matter. All that matters is the simple rhythm of a voice telling a story, a voice pulling back the curtain on another time. The past we're stepping into isn't glamorous. It's not the kind of past you'd want to visit for long, but it's fascinating. It's full of smells, textures, and sensations we no longer know. Think of it like wandering through a long abandoned house. The wallpaper is peeling, the floorboards creak, the air is heavy with dust, but every object tells a story. Every corner hides something forgotten. Tonight, that's what we're doing. We're peeking into the ordinary rooms of a world that feels distant, but was once absolutely real. We'll begin in the morning. You'll wake up, not in a modern bed, but in one stuffed with straw, alive with small uninvited guests. You'll stretch and feel your joints ache from the stiffness of the mattress. You'll breathe in air that tastes faintly of smoke and manure. You'll splash your face with water that's colder than comfort, and pat yourself dry with a towel, so stiff it could double as a weapon. You'll stand before a cracked mirror, hair wild, skin tight, already wondering if today will feel any different than yesterday. From there, we'll move through the rituals of the day. A toothbrush that's little more than pig bristles jammed into a stick. Tooth powder made of chalk and charcoal, rough and bitter. Clothes layered until your body feels less dressed and more encased. Every button a battle, every collar a form of restraint. Breakfast will be plain, bread, porridge, maybe a sip of weak ale or tea if you're fortunate. Then it's out into the world, the streets thick with smoke, mud, and noise. Markets buzzing with sellers, animals, and the sharp tang of too many people in too small a space. We'll stop at the barber's chair, which might just as easily serve as the dentist's. We'll visit the public bathhouse, where strangers, soaked together in water, more brown than clear. We'll walk through alleys lined with open drains and stand at the edge of a privy that offers no real privacy at all. We'll meet doctors who believe illness seeps in through open pores and neighbors who swear by vinegar, garlic, or prayer as the best protection against plague. And when the day is done, when the smoke of a dozen fireplaces has dulled the air, we'll return to bed again. The straw pokes, the fleas bite, but exhaustion wins. Sleep comes, not because the bed is comfortable, but because the body can't keep going anymore. That's the rhythm of this world. Discomfort stitched together with routine. It sounds bleak, maybe, but there's a strange comfort in it too, because everyone lived it together. Everyone shared the same grime, the same smells, the same endless balancing act between dignity and survival. And in some way, that makes it familiar. So wherever you are tonight, in bed, on a couch, on a long journey, let yourself slip into that rhythm with me. You don't need to memorize names or dates. You don't need to picture every detail perfectly. Just let the story wash over you like the sound of rain on a roof. Let your mind drift where it will, because tonight, history isn't about battles or kings. It's about people like us. People waking up, scratching their heads, brushing their teeth with questionable bristles, worrying about laundry, complaining about the weather, and dreaming of something just a little better. They lived, they endured, and in their ordinary days, they left behind a story worth telling. And it begins now. You stir awake to a sound that isn't an alarm clock, because such things don't exist yet. Instead, it's the creak of timbers above you, the shuffle of someone already moving around in the next room, or maybe the distant clip of horse hooves on the cobbles outside. Morning arrives here not with gentle beeps, but with the weight of noise seeping in through thin walls and rattling windows. The light is dim, not the sharp glow of a bulb, but a greyness creeping through curtains that were washed months ago, if ever. It's filtered through soot, fog and smoke before it reaches you, turning the world into a perpetual half-shade. You blink, trying to clear the heaviness from your eyes, and already the cold has announced itself. The room feels like it's never truly warmed, not even in summer. You shift under the covers, or what passes for covers. Blankets stitched from wool, patched and repatched, heavy enough to weigh down your limbs, yet somehow incapable of keeping you truly warm. Beneath you, the mattress groans. It isn't foam, springs, or even feathers. It's straw stuffed into a sack, pressed flat in some places, and bulging in others. Each movement releases a faint whisper of dust, a reminder that your bed is just one step removed from the stable. You try to roll, and a sharp point jabs your side, an errant straw stalk poking through the fabric, stubborn and unforgiving. You shift again, only to feel another dig into your shoulder. Eventually you give up. Comfort is not the goal here. Endurance is. You close your eyes for a moment, considering whether a few more minutes of restless half-sleep are worth the risk of fleas resuming their morning parade. Because yes, they're here too, always, tiny companions that emerge when the warmth of your body convinces them it's time for breakfast. They move with confidence, as if they've paid rent. You scratch at an ankle, then at your neck, wondering idly how many of them have made a home in the seams of the blanket. The truth is best left unexamined. Everyone scratches. Everyone accepts it. Complaining would only make you sound delicate. The air is its own presence, a mix of things you can't quite separate. Cold dust from the fireplace that burned low in the night. The faint tang of coal smoke drifting in from other houses along the street. The sour undertone of damp wood that never quite dries out. If you breathe deeply, there's even a hint of manure carried up from the street, where horses have already begun their day. It's not pleasant, but it's familiar. It's the smell of life here. You push back the covers, bracing yourself. The floor is unforgiving, bare boards or stone tiles that hold the night's chill, as if determined to punish bare feet. You lower your toes, wince, then commit. Standing feels like stepping into another kind of cold, one that seeps through clothing and lingers in your bones. The room isn't just chilly, it's damp, the kind of damp that clings, reminding you that walls are only a thin defense against the world outside. There's no clock to tell you the hour. Time here is guessed at by light, by habit, by the rhythm of others already at work. You know it's morning because the grey outside is growing stronger, because the house creaks with activity, because the day insists on beginning, whether you're ready or not. You glance around your room. The washstand waits in the corner, a jug of water balanced on top, a small basin beneath. The surface of the water has a film, thin but undeniable, as though dust and the night air have conspired to remind you that freshness is fleeting. Beside it sits a towel, stiff from drying and re-drying without ever being truly washed. A small mirror leans against the wall. Its glass is warped, the reflection faint, as if it would prefer not to show you what you look like this early. Your hair is matted from the nightcap, your skin pale with the cold, your eyes rimmed in shadows. You don't linger on the sight. In this world, mirrors are not for vanity, they're for function, and only briefly at that. Somewhere outside, a cart rattles by. Hooves strike the stones with steady rhythm, wheels clatter, and a voice calls out, sharp and brisk. The city is already alive. Smoke rises from chimneys, mingling with fog, until the sky itself looks tired. A church bell tolls the hour, long and heavy, echoing across rooftops. It's both comforting and oppressive, reminding you that time moves forward regardless of how ready you are to meet it. You rub your arms, trying to stir warmth into your limbs. The clothes you wore to bed are the same you'll wear now. Undressing at night is a luxury, a habit reserved for the wealthy or the carefree. For everyone else, sleep and waking blend together in the same garments. Wool, linen, patched, worn until they nearly disintegrate. They itch. They always itch. But they cover you, and that is enough. There's no sense of rushing. The day stretches ahead, like a long, uneven road. It will be filled with labor, with errands, with the dull persistence of routine. But for now, in this quiet moment of waking, you simply exist. You breathe the smoky air, you scratch at the persistent itch on your arm, you stretch your back until the joints pop. You are alive, not comfortable, not refreshed, but alive. And that here is already a small victory. You glance once more at the window. Outside, the fog curls between chimneys, the world blurring at its edges. Somewhere someone coughs, deep and rattling. Somewhere else, laughter rises, surprising in its brightness. Life continues, messy and stubborn, unbothered by the state of your mattress or the fleas in your blanket. You take a step toward the washstand. The water waits, the day waits. And so, with a sigh, you begin. The bed, at first glance, looks harmless enough. A lumpy frame of wood, a pile of blankets, a pillow that has long since lost its shape. But once you've lain in it for more than a few minutes, you realize it's less a place of rest and more a small ecosystem. An ecosystem in which you are not the ruler, but the reluctant host. You don't think about it during the day. You avoid the subject in conversation. But when night comes, when the candle gutters low and silence presses in, you feel it immediately. The mattress isn't still. It isn't neutral. It's alive. The straw filling shifts with its own agenda, crackling faintly, as though it remembers every person who has slept here before you. Each rustle suggests not comfort, but the movement of small bodies you'd rather not name. The fleas arrive first, bold little soldiers who thrive on the certainty that you cannot banish them. They wait until you've found a position that almost feels bearable, then strike. One distracts you at the ankle, while another sinks its teeth into the back of your knee. You scratch one spot, only to feel another itch flare 2 inches away. It's a cruel choreography, and they've perfected it. Then come the lice. These are slower, more deliberate. They cling to hair, to seams, to fabric. They set up entire communities in your pillow stuffing, building dynasties that will outlive the blanket itself. At times you swear you can feel them shifting, as though the pillow breathes along with you. You shift your head, hoping to find a cooler spot, but it's always the same. A low-level itch that never leaves, just recedes into the background until you forget whether you're scratching from irritation or from habit. And then there are the bedbugs. You'd prefer not to believe in them, but denial doesn't hold long. The first time you notice a small red mark on your arm, you think perhaps it's nothing. The second time, you tell yourself it's coincidence. But by the third or fourth night, when you wake to find new bites lined neatly along your wrist or back, you accept the truth. They are here. They've been here. and they're not going anywhere. What unnerves you most is not their bite, but their timing. They wait for stillness. When you surrender to sleep, they emerge, creeping silently across the sheets. They know your rhythms. They know when you're least aware, and in the grey hours before dawn, when you finally stir, they retreat, vanishing into cracks and seams, as if they were never real. You might think fumigation or cleaning would help, but here in this world, remedies are limited. You can sprinkle vinegar across the sheets, dust the mattress with chalk or herbs, hang blankets in the cold air, and beat them with sticks until clouds of dust and debris rise into the sky. But the pests always return. They are too entrenched, too patient. The truth whispered in every household is simple. The bed belongs to them as much as it belongs to you. Even the blanket has its own presence. Heavy, scratchy, never quite clean. It carries the scent of smoke from the fire, of damp from the air, of sweat from nights long past. When you pull it over yourself, it doesn't feel like a shield, but like a pact. You'll share warmth, but you'll also share every memory it has absorbed. Some nights, when the cold is sharpest, you accept this agreement without hesitation. Other nights, you lie beneath it with unease, wondering how many unseen creatures crawl in its folds. The sound of the bed itself is another constant. Each shift of your body draws a groan from the wooden frame, a complaint that echoes in the stillness. Sometimes it pops sharply, as if cracking under pressure. Other times it sighs low, a reminder that it has weathered decades of sleepers, each leaving behind a little of themselves. You close your eyes, but the sound lingers, making it impossible to forget that rest here is never silent. And yet, despite all this, despite the scratching, the creaking, the faint rustle of straw, this bed is still your refuge. You collapse into it at the end of the day, because there is nowhere else to go. You learn to sleep through the bites, to adjust to the itch, to let exhaustion smother discomfort. Sleep comes not because the bed is welcoming, but because your body insists it shuts down in self-defense, ignoring every scratch, every tickle, every reminder that you're not alone in the darkness. Sometimes, though, when the house is very quiet and the fire has burned out, you lie awake and listen. You hear the faint tap of rain against the window, the distant bark of a dog, the soft hiss of fog pressing against the glass. And underneath it all, closer, unavoidable, the whisper of movement in your own bed. It's a reminder that in this world, comfort is rare, solitude rarer still. You share everything, even the place where you dream. By morning the evidence is clear, tiny welts on your arms, a streak of red where you scratched too hard in your sleep, a pillow that smells faintly of dust and sweat. You sigh, already resigned to another day, another night, another cycle of quiet endurance, because this is life here. The bed is not an enemy and not a friend. It is simply the stage on which you perform the nightly act of survival. And when you rise, when you step away from it and begin the day, you don't speak of what happened in the dark. No one does. The bed's secrets remain unspoken, tucked into its seams, waiting patiently for your return. The washstand waits in the corner, a simple wooden frame that has seen better days. Its surface is scarred from years of splashed water and careless scrubbing, and the basin that rests on top carries a faint ring of residue. No amount of rinsing ever seems to erase. Beside it sits a jug of water, heavy, awkward, and lukewarm at best. This is the closest you'll come to a morning shower, and it requires more bravery than you'd like to admit. You lift the jug and pour. The water slaps into the basin with a sound that feels louder than it should, as though it's announcing your intentions to the whole house. The surface ripples, catching the weak light, and you notice the small flecks floating on top, dust perhaps, or tiny fragments of whatever vessel carried it here. You tell yourself it doesn't matter. The water is water, and water is precious enough not to question too closely. You dip your fingers in and instantly recoil. It's cold, not the refreshing kind of cold, but the biting kind that stings your skin and makes you regret every life choice that led you here. You shake your hand, droplets scattering, and stare at the basin as though it has betrayed you. Still, the ritual must be done. Cleanliness might be more of an aspiration than a reality in this world, but appearances count. There's a cloth hanging from the side of the stand, stiff, greyish, and forever damp. It carries the faint odor of soap used long ago and never properly rinsed out. You take it anyway, dunk it in the basin, and wring it until it drips. The cloth resists, holding its moisture like a grudge, but eventually it surrenders enough for you to press it against your face. The shock is immediate. Your skin tightens, your breath catches, and your eyes water. It feels less like washing and more like punishment. You scrub lightly at your cheeks, your forehead, the back of your neck, all the while reminding yourself that this is better than nothing. Dirt has a way of clinging here, soot from the fire, smoke from the air, the simple accumulation of daily living. A quick rinse won't erase it, but it will at least convince others you tried. Soap is available, but it is not something you use lightly. A small block sits on the shelf, yellowish and hard, more stone than cleanser. It was made with fat and lye, boiled down until it could burn the skin as easily as it could clean it. Using it too often risks leaving your hands cracked and raw, so you ration it, saving it for when you know you'll be seen by people whose opinion matters. Today you decide, the plain cloth will have to suffice. You run it across your arms, dabbing at the places most likely to betray you, behind the ears, under the chin, along the collarbone. Each pass leaves your skin damp, but not truly clean. It's less about removing dirt and more about redistributing it, spreading the evidence thin enough that it no longer offends. You avoid looking in the mirror while you work. Mirrors here do not flatter. They accuse, better to finish the task without judgment. When you've done all you can bear, you drop the cloth back into the basin. The water has darkened slightly, clouded with dust and oils, carrying away just enough of yesterday's residue to make the effort seem worthwhile. You splash once more across your face, flinch at the cold, then pat yourself dry with the towel. Calling it dry is generous. The towel is perpetually damp, as if it resents being asked to absorb anything. You press it against your skin anyway, grateful more for the ritual than the result. Your hair, meanwhile, remains untouched. Washing it is an ordeal best saved for rare occasions, when you have both the firewood to heat water and the time to endure the dripping mess that follows. For now, you run your fingers through the tangles, grimace at the resistance, and settle for pushing it into some semblance of order. A comb sits nearby, its teeth uneven, its handle worn. You eye it warily. It's been shared too often, with too many heads, to inspire confidence. Today you leave it where it rests. The final touch is scent. A small vial of tonic, sharp and herbal, waits on the shelf. You dab a little onto your wrists and neck, wincing at the sting. It doesn't so much mask odor as wrestle with it, replacing the smell of sleep and sweat with something harsher, something that clings like smoke. It's not pleasant, but it's intentional, and that counts for something. By the time you step back from the washstand, you don't feel clean, not exactly, but you feel prepared to face others, to walk the streets, to hold your head high enough that no one can accuse you of neglect. That, in this world, is as close to cleanliness as most people ever come. You glance once more at the basin. The water sits still now, reflecting the dim light. It looks deceptively calm, almost inviting, as though it hadn't just reminded you of the limits of comfort. You know you'll return to it again before long, repeating the same ritual, chasing the same illusion of freshness. But for now, the task is complete. You wipe your hands on the towel, tug your sleeves into place, and straighten your posture. Outside, the day waits. And though your skin still tingles from the cold, though the itch of the mattress still lingers, you feel a small sense of victory. You have washed, or at least attempted to. In a world where dirt and dust cling to everything, that is no small thing. And so, with a final glance at the mirror, Quick, dismissive, reluctant, you turn away. The morning has begun. Your hair greets the morning with more defiance than you do. It doesn't lie flat, it doesn't shine, and it certainly doesn't cooperate. Instead, it forms itself into shapes of its own choosing, peaks, tangles, and snarled knots that look less like a style and more like a warning. Each strand seems coated in the residue of smoke, and yesterday's air, heavy enough to resist even your most determined fingers. To modern eyes, this would be a problem solved with shampoo, conditioner, and a few vigorous minutes beneath hot water. But here, hair is a battle. You rarely win. Shampoo hasn't entered your vocabulary, and the closest thing to a rinse requires heating bucket after bucket of water over the fire, pouring it awkwardly into a basin, and then crouching in misery as it drips down your neck and into your eyes. It's an ordeal so dreaded that most people postpone it for weeks, sometimes months, until the weight of grease becomes impossible to ignore. Instead, other tools must suffice. A jar of bear grease sits on the shelf, faintly rancid, but still useful. It can be worked into the scalp to add sheen and control, though control here means taming wildness into something merely unruly rather than catastrophic. Castor oil is another option. Slick, pungent, and messy. Either one leaves your hair glistening in the light, though the shine owes less to cleanliness than to a layer of stubborn oil clinging to every strand. The comb, when you dare to use it, is both ally and adversary. Its teeth are carved from bone or stiff wood, uneven and unforgiving. You drag it through your hair, and it catches almost immediately. You tug, the comb resists. You tug harder, and a small avalanche of loose hairs comes free, clinging to the teeth like a silent protest. Each pull feels like a negotiation. How much pain are you willing to endure for the sake of appearance? After a few minutes, your scalp tingles, your patience frays, and you settle for presentable rather than tidy. For men, hair is expected to be short, or at least shorter than the alternative. Fashion dictates a style slicked down with pomade, a mixture of fat, wax, and whatever scent can disguise the odor. Applying it feels like sealing your head beneath a layer of waxy armor. It holds the hair in place, yes, but it also clings to hats, collars, and pillows. Once applied, it stays with you for days, reminding everyone nearby that grooming here is less about freshness and more about endurance. For women, hair is another universe entirely. It must be long, because long hair is respectable, but respectability comes with a price. Brushing it out each morning is an ordeal that can last an hour, sometimes more, depending on the length and the number of tangles waiting to be discovered. Brushes, usually fitted with stiff bristles of boar hair, scrape across the scalp with a sting that leaves eyes watering. Yet this ritual is non-negotiable. To appear in public with unbrushed hair would signal laziness, even moral weakness. Once smoothed, at least in theory, the hair must be contained. Buns, braids, and elaborate coils are twisted into place, pinned with metal or bone, then wrapped in scarves or hidden beneath caps. The larger the bun, the greater the impression, though it often conceals weeks of neglect beneath its polished surface. Our hairpins become weapons in this struggle, jabbed firmly into place, until the entire structure feels more architectural than organic. Coverings are essential for both genders. A nightcap worn to bed keeps the hair from tangling too wildly, though in truth it only contains the chaos rather than preventing it. In the morning, men reach for hats almost instinctively, tall ones for the ambitious, flat caps for the working class. A hat serves many purposes: protection against weather, a mark of respectability, and most importantly, a shield to disguise whatever disarray lurks beneath. Women have their own arsenal of coverings: bonnets for outdoors, caps for indoors, veils for the devout. Each signals not only modesty, but also the constant battle to keep hair hidden, ordered, and acceptable. A bonnet tied beneath the chin says as much about propriety as it does about fashion. It frames the face neatly, distracting from whatever tangles were left unresolved at home. And then there are the unwelcome residents, the lice, which claim their place without invitation. They move deftly along the scalp, nestling into warm crevices, laying eggs that cling stubbornly to strands no comb can dislodge. Delousing becomes a routine as regular as brushing. Mothers sit children down and part their hair section by section, hunting with practiced fingers, crushing the invaders between thumbnails. It's unpleasant, but it's also a form of care, a way of saying, you are tended to, you are not abandoned. Even suffering, here, carries its own small intimacy. The smell of hair is another constant. Smoke settles into it, lingering no matter how many days pass. Oil adds its own pungency, sweat mingles with both, creating a fragrance unique to this world, earthy, sharp, and inescapable. A ribbon tied neatly, or a cap pulled firmly into place, might disguise it for a while, but the truth is always waiting just beneath the surface. Still, appearances must be maintained. In this society, to step outside with unkempt hair is to invite judgment. It doesn't matter that everyone struggles with the same battles, the same pests, the same oils and odors. Respectability depends not on what is true, but on what is shown. A neat braid, a polished bun, a carefully placed hat, these are not luxuries. They are shields, signals to the world that you belong, that you are trying, that you are not entirely undone by the grime and chaos of daily life. So you work with what you have. You smooth, you pin, you tie, you cover, you settle for less than perfect, but more than disgraceful. And when you step out into the street, you lift your head a little higher, comforted by the knowledge that the struggle is hidden. No one sees the oil under your nails, the bites along your scalp, or the clump of hair still caught in the comb. They see the hat, the bonnet, the braid, they see enough. And in this world, enough is victory. Your mouth, though you rarely admit it, is a battlefield. You can hide unwashed clothes beneath layers. You can mask odors with oils and tonics. You can cover tangled hair with a cap, but your teeth give you away. Every word you speak, every smile you attempt, every bite you take, these reveal the truth more mercilessly than anything else. The morning ritual of tending to them begins not with fresh toothpaste in a neat tube, but with a tool that resembles a small broomstick. The toothbrush here is primitive, a length of wood carved at one end to hold a cluster of coarse bristles. They're made from animal hair, stiffened with age, stained by repeated use. Some bend outward like a hedgehog's spines, others break off entirely, leaving gaps that scratch the gums instead of cleaning them. When you press it against your teeth, it doesn't glide. It scrapes. Beside the brush sits a tin of powder. Its contents are chalky, pale, and uninviting. This is tooth powder, a mixture of crushed chalk, charcoal, and whatever household spice or herb might make it seem less like punishment. Sometimes a pinch of cinnamon is added, sometimes clove, sometimes mint if you can afford it. But the truth is unavoidable. The taste is bitter, dusty, and vaguely metallic. You dip the brush into it, tap off the excess, and then begin. The sensation is neither refreshing nor pleasant. The bristles scrape against enamel, with a sound that makes your jaw tighten. Each stroke feels less like polishing, and more like sanding. Your gums, already tender, protest at the roughness. They bleed easily, and crimson stains the foam in the corners of your mouth. You spit into the basin, and the water turns a cloudy pink, swirling with tiny black flecks of charcoal. You persist because you must. To neglect your teeth entirely would be worse. They ache if ignored, throbbing quietly until the pain spreads into your jaw, your head, your very sleep. Some of them are already loose, shifting slightly when you bite down. Others are chipped, cracked, on a stone hidden in bread, or a kernel too stubborn to yield. The powder does little to stop decay, but it buys you time, convinces you that you're doing something to fight back. There is no floss, no delicate thread to slip between teeth. If food becomes lodged there, you either work at it with your tongue until it moves, or you ignore it until it rots away. Sometimes a sliver of wood, a toothpick, hastily whittled, can help, but even that carries risks. Push too hard, and you pierce the gum, opening the way for infection. Infection here is never minor. A single abscess can swell until the jaw locks, fever rises and life itself teeters. When pain grows unbearable, there are few options. A rinse of salt water is one. Stronger souls choose gin, swishing it until the burn numbs more than just the mouth. Herbs steeped in vinegar are another, sage, myrrh, or rosemary if you're lucky. These soothe for a time, but never cure. At best, they dull the edge long enough for sleep to return. At worst, they remind you just how deep the rot has gone. If the agony refuses to pass, you consider the dentist. But here, the dentist is not a specialist with bright lights and sterile tools. He is often the barber, or the apothecary, or simply a man with a steady hand and a set of pliers. His office smells of blood and smoke. His instruments lie unpolished on a wooden table, and his smile carries its own gaps and stains. You sit in a chair, grip the arms until your knuckles whiten, and pray. There is no anesthesia, no numbing gel, no reassuring countdown from 10. The dentist wedges his tool around the offending tooth, braces himself, and pulls. Sometimes the tooth comes free at once, releasing with a sickening pop. Sometimes it resists, splintering in half, leaving shards embedded in the gum. In those moments, the pain is so sharp, it feels less like pain and more like the world itself splitting apart. Your vision darkens, your ears ring, and your body shakes with the shock. When it is over, you spit blood for hours. The wound throbs, swells, sometimes festers. Infection may set in, despite your best efforts, creeping into bone, into blood. Some people never recover. They waste away from what began as a toothache, remembered only as another victim of invisible decay, yet vanity persists. Stained teeth can be lightened, in theory. Charcoal rubbed directly onto the enamel scrapes away some of the film, though it scratches as much as it polishes. Chalk too is used, leaving the mouth dusty and dry, but a shade brighter. Some even chew on herbs like parsley, hoping the green freshness will mask what lingers. Breath is another battle. Strong wines, pungent spices, or even simple vinegar are employed to disguise the odor of rot. But the truth is always there, close, inescapable. Children fare no better. Their diets, heavy with bread and sweetened treats when available, leave small teeth riddled with holes. They cry in the night with swollen faces, while parents soothe them with whatever herbs or spirits are on hand. Many lose their teeth early, leaving gaps that never fill properly. Smiles become rare in portraits, lips pressed tight to conceal what lies behind. And yet, in all this, there is resignation. People know that teeth fail. They know that by middle age, most will have gaps, chips, or entire rows missing. False teeth exist, crude plates made from ivory, bone, or the teeth of the dead. But they are expensive, uncomfortable, and prone to rattling loose at the worst possible moments. For most, the best outcome is simply keeping enough teeth to chew without agony. So each morning, you scrape with your brush, grind powder into enamel, spit into the basin, and carry on. You tell yourself that today, at least you've kept the worst at bay. You press your lips together when you smile, you avoid biting into anything too hard, and you hope quietly, desperately, that no sudden ache will bloom into something darker. Because here, in this world, your teeth are not just part of you. They are a reminder of how fragile you are, how close the line lies between discomfort and danger. And every scrape of the brush is a small act of defiance against the decay, always waiting just below the surface. Before you can dress for the day, before the outer layers of wool, linen, or silk make their appearance, you must confront the foundation of clothing in this world, the undergarments. They are not glamorous, they are not comfortable, but they are essential, forming a barrier between skin and fabric, absorbing sweat, dirt, and oils that would otherwise stain the outer layers. In theory, they protect. In practice, they torment. You begin with drawers. If you're fortunate enough to own them, these are not the light, elastic garments of the modern age. They are long, extending to the knee, or even the calf, tied at the waist with a cord. Elastic hasn't been invented, so you rely on knots and ties, fumbling until you achieve something that is neither too loose nor so tight. that your circulation protests. The fabric is coarse, usually wool or heavy linen, stiffened further by repeated washings in harsh soaps. Against bare skin, it scratches like sandpaper, but without them, you risk staining your trousers or skirts, and modesty leaves little choice. Over the drawers comes the shirt, or chemise. For men, it is a long garment of plain linen, reaching mid-thigh, with sleeves that narrow awkwardly at the wrists. For women, the chemise is longer, often ankle length, serving both as underdress and nightdress. It is rarely new. Instead, it is patched, mended, and handed down until the fabric thins to near transparency. Pulling it on feels less like slipping into clothing and more like draping yourself in obligation. It carries the faint smell of smoke from the hearth, the tang of lye soap, and the ever-present undertone of human life. Sweat and effort ground into every seam. Then there are stockings. These are not soft cotton blends, but woolen tubes held up with garters. The wool itches, clings, and traps heat. But bare legs are indecent, and warmth in winter is too precious to abandon. You tug them into place, adjusting until the garters bite into your thighs, leaving red marks that will last the day. They sag almost immediately, bunching around the ankles, demanding constant attention. For women, the next layer is the corset, though in polite company, it is never called that. Stays, bodies, or simply support. The language softens what the garment itself does not. Constructed of stiffened fabric, reinforced with whalebone or reeds, it encases the torso, reshaping posture and silhouette. To wear one is to surrender your breath to fashion. Lacing it requires help. A maid, a sister, or a mother pulls the cords tight, tugging until your ribs protest. You grip the bedpost, willing yourself not to gasp too loudly. When the laces are tied off, you stand straighter, yes, but also weaker. Each inhale is shallow, each movement restricted. Yet to forego it would mark you as slovenly, improper, even immoral. For men, a waistcoat might serve as the next inner layer, quilted and close-fitting. It provides warmth, certainly, but also traps every ounce of sweat. Beneath it, the shirt clings damply, and by midday, the undergarments have absorbed more discomfort than protection. Still, this layering is non-negotiable. To wear fewer garments is to court scandal. Undergarments, here, are not washed daily. In fact, they are not washed weekly. Linen may be laundered once every several days, perhaps once a week if labor allows. Wool is washed even less, as it shrinks and warps easily. Instead, garments are aired out, hung by the fire to dry, sprinkled with vinegar or herbs to disguise odors. By midweek, they carry a scent best described as damp cellar mixed with candle smoke. By Sunday, they could stand upright on their own. Yet to those who live within this rhythm, the smell is not shocking, it is simply life. Changing undergarments is itself an ordeal. Washing requires hauling water, heating it over the fire, scrubbing each piece against boards until your knuckles crack. Soap, made from animal fat and lye, is harsh enough to burn skin, let alone fabric. Clothes wear out quickly under this treatment, so families ration washings carefully. Owning 3 sets of undergarments is considered sufficient, one to wear, one to wash, one to mend. Anything more is indulgence. Children fare no better. Their shirts and shifts are smaller, but no less coarse. They itch and bind, and children wriggle constantly to escape them. Mothers scold, reminding them that cleanliness depends on keeping outer clothes free of stains. The undergarments bear the burden so that the garments the world sees remain presentable. What makes these layers most unbearable is their persistence. They never come off, not fully, not often. At night, you sleep in them, unwilling to expose yourself to the cold air or the curious eyes of family members who share the room. In the morning, you rise already dressed in yesterday's grime, adding fresh layers on top. Skin rarely touches open air, save for the face and hands. The rest remains swaddled, sweating, and itching in silence. And yet, there is meaning here. Undergarments are not merely functional. They carry status, fine linen, white and well-stitched, proclaims wealth even if no one but your household sees it. Embroidered shifts or silk-lined stays whisper of privilege. For the poor, the fabric is rough, unbleached, unadorned. Their undergarments tell the same story as their hands: hard work, scarcity, and endurance. So you tie the cord at your waist, pull the chemise into place, tug the stockings higher, lace the stays tight. Each step feels less like dressing and more like donning armor that scratches, pinches, and weighs. But once in place, you are ready to meet the world, or at least to endure it. You smooth the wrinkles, ignore the itch, and stand straighter than you feel. These are not clothes of comfort, but of duty. They remind you of who you are, where you belong, and what the world expects to see. And with that, the first layer is complete. Once the undergarments are in place, the true labor begins: the outer layers. Clothing here is not a single garment slipped on in haste. It is an assembly, a construction, a daily performance stitched together piece by piece. Each item carries weight, literal and symbolic. To be dressed is not merely to be covered. It is to announce to the world who you are, where you stand, and what role you play. For men, the first step is usually breeches or trousers. Breeches ending at the knee must be buttoned or tied, snug enough to prevent sagging but roomy enough to allow labor. Trousers, longer and looser, belong more often to those who work outdoors, their fabric reinforced against mud and wear. Pulling them on is awkward. The material is heavy, stiff from repeated exposure to damp weather, and soap too harsh for cloth. They resist your movements until body heat softens them, creases folding where they always have, grooves molded to your shape through long use. Above the breeches comes the waistcoat, quilted or lined, often buttoned high. It closes the torso in a layer of formality. The fabric may be wool, sturdy and plain, or silk for the wealthier, its sheen catching light in a way that declares prosperity without words. The buttons, often brass or bone, are both decoration and torment. Small, numerous, requiring patience in the cold of morning. Each fastened button feels like a commitment, another tether pulling the body upright, the stomach inward, the shoulders back. Then comes the coat. For the working poor, this may be a simple jacket, patched until the fabric beneath the patch is thinner than the patch itself. For tradesmen and gentry, it is longer, more fitted, sometimes extending to the knees. Wool, always wool, dyed in colors that proclaim rank, deep browns and blacks for sobriety, muted greens and blues for modest display, rich reds or purples for those who dare to be seen. Putting it on is like carrying a second body. It drapes heavy, traps heat, and gathers the smell of every room you enter. For women, the process is longer, more complex, and never truly solitary. Once the stays are laced, the petticoats follow, one layer, then another, sometimes 3 or 4 depending on the season and the desired fullness. Each is a skirt of plain fabric, tied at the waist, adding both volume and insulation. The weight grows with every tie, until walking feels less like movement and more like negotiating with fabric. Yet fullness is beauty, and beauty is expectation. Over the petticoats comes the gown or dress. It slips over the head, or is fastened in sections, fitted closely to the waist, flaring below. Sleeves are long, sometimes puffed, narrowing at the wrist with ties or buttons. The neckline varies with modesty, and occasion high collars for piety, scooped for fashion, ruffled or plain depending on taste and coin. The dress is not light, its seams are lined with stiffening, its hem weighted to hang correctly. When you move, it moves with deliberate grace, reminding you of its presence at every step. Accessories matter. Aprons for work, white and plain, tied tightly over the gown, shawls or fitches for warmth and modesty, tucked neatly at the bosom. Caps, carefully laundered, signaling respectability. Bonnets outdoors, shielding face and hair from dust and judgment alike. Every piece is both practical and symbolic, marking you as diligent, as respectable, as belonging. Fastenings are endless. Buttons, hooks, laces, each demands time, each requires precision. A crooked button or loose lace risks not only ridicule but suspicion. If you cannot dress yourself properly, what else might you neglect? Mothers teach daughters early that dressing is not simply covering the body, but displaying discipline. Fathers remind sons that an untidy waistcoat speaks louder than words about a man's reliability. Clothing, too, announces occupation. The smith wears garments blackened with soot, their cuffs frayed from sparks. The weaver's coat carries threads caught in seams, a tapestry of labor stitched into every fold. The servant's dress is plain, darker in hue, designed not to attract notice, but to blend into the household's background. The wealthy, by contrast, proclaim their leisure with fabrics too delicate for work. Silk that stains at a touch, lace that tangles on the slightest edge, and always the weight. Every layer adds to it until the body feels encased, armor-bound against both weather and the gaze of others. In summer, the heat is oppressive, sweat soaking into linen that cannot be changed daily. In winter, the same layers barely suffice, the wind slicing through seams and hems. Yet there is no escape. To appear in public without proper dress is to court shame. Better to swelter, better to freeze, than to be seen as careless. Children, too, are drawn into this ritual. Little boys wear miniature versions of breeches and coats, buttoned stiffly until they can barely bend. Girls are laced into stays as soon as they can walk, their gowns layered and tied like their mothers. Comfort is not the goal, training is. By dressing them early, parents shape not only posture but behavior, teaching submission to fabric, to fashion, to society itself. Dressing takes time. It is not a matter of minutes, but of a quarter hour, half an hour, sometimes more, if the laces tangle or a button slips free. To be late is common, to sigh in frustration, inevitable. Yet once dressed, once every tie is secured and every seam adjusted, there is a peculiar satisfaction. The body feels contained, shaped into the form society demands. You may itch beneath the wool, sweat beneath the linen, stumble beneath the petticoats, but outwardly, you belong, and that is the true purpose of these garments. Not warmth, not protection, not even modesty. They are declarations. Each coat, each gown, each bonnet says, I am part of this world. I follow its rules, I endure its burdens. Clothing here is less about choice than about survival, the survival of reputation, of dignity, of place. So you straighten the cuffs, smooth the front of the waistcoat, adjust the cap until it sits just so. You glance once more in the warped mirror, not for vanity, but for reassurance that nothing is glaringly wrong. Then you turn toward the door. The day will be long, and the clothes will grow heavier with every hour, but for now you are dressed. And that is enough. The day cannot truly begin without food, though what counts as breakfast here is a far cry from the plates stacked with eggs, bacon, and steaming mugs of coffee that a modern mind might imagine. Breakfast in this world is modest, often meager, sometimes skipped altogether. It is not a feast, but a functional ritual, fuel for the hours ahead, nothing more. The centerpiece of most mornings is bread, thick, heavy, sometimes days old. It serves as the constant foundation of the diet. Fresh loaves are rare luxuries, their crusts crisp and interiors soft. More often, the bread has hardened overnight, the crust dense enough to challenge your teeth, the center dry and crumbly. To soften it, you dip it in ale or broth, or soak it briefly in milk, if you are fortunate enough to have any. Flavor is not the goal. Endurance is. Each bite is a task, filling the stomach without offering joy. Alongside the bread might come porridge, oats or barley, simmered in water, thickened until they cling to the spoon, sometimes laced with a pinch of salt, sometimes sweetened with honey, if luck permits. The porridge is bland, but it warms the belly. On poor days, it is thinned nearly to gruel, a watery paste more symbolic than satisfying. On better days, it is thick and sustaining, a bowl that anchors you against the hunger, sure to return before noon. Meat in the morning is rare. A slice of salted bacon, if available, is treated less as food, and more as seasoning, diced into porridge, or fried to flavor bread. Eggs, when they appear, are prized boiled hard, scrambled over fire, or fried in pans already slick with weeks of use. They are fragile luxuries, easily broken, easily spoiled, and never taken for granted. Cheese is more common, though it arrives pungent, crumbly, sometimes veined with mold. A slice alongside bread provides both protein and the sharp tang of preservation. Fruit is a fleeting presence. An apple, shriveled from storage, is a gift. Berries, when in season, brighten the table, though they vanish as quickly as they arrive. Vegetables appear only in the form of leftovers. Onions stewed the night before, turnips roasted and saved, cabbage fried until its smell lingers long after the taste. Breakfast is rarely fresh. It is yesterday's abundance stretched into today's survival. But the true heart of the morning lies not in what you eat, but in what you drink. Water, though abundant, is seldom trusted. Drawn from wells that may or may not be clean, carried in wooden pails that never dry fully, it tastes of earth and rust. To drink it plain is a gamble. Better, always, to boil it, or more reliably still, to turn to ale. Ale is the breakfast drink of choice for much of the population, not the bitter, heavy brews of later centuries, but small beer, weak, lightly fermented, low in alcohol, brewed in great batches in every household. It is cloudy, sour at times, but safer than water. Children drink it, the elderly drink it. Workers gulp it down before setting out for fields or workshops. It is less a luxury than a necessity, a daily safeguard against the unseen dangers lurking in every drop of unboiled water. For those with greater means, tea has begun to appear, imported from distant lands, sold in small, expensive parcels. It is brewed sparingly, each leaf used more than once. The taste is subtle, bitter, foreign. At first, many distrust it, but over time it gains favor, especially among the well-to-do. Tea becomes not merely a beverage, but a symbol of refinement, a declaration that you can afford not just sustenance, but delicacy. Coffee, too, is making its way into taverns and households, though its bitterness shocks the unprepared tongue. Served dark and strong, it quickens the mind in a way ale never does. Merchants praise it, scholars cling to it, and some claim it sharpens thought for the day ahead. Yet for most it remains rare, a drink of the city, exotic and unfamiliar. Milk is reserved largely for children, or used sparingly in cooking. Adults seldom drink it outright. It spoils too quickly, sours within hours, unless boiled. More often it is transformed into butter or cheese, its life extended through preservation. To sip milk fresh is a small delight, but also a brief one, vanishing as quickly as the morning fog. The act of breakfast itself is simple, often silent. Families gather around a wooden table, bowls and mugs shared, portions measured with care. Conversation is brief. Mouths are too busy chewing hard bread, too focused on preparing for the labor ahead. The fire smolders in the hearth, casting light on faces lined with sleep. Children squirm, reluctant, picking at crusts. Parents chide gently, urging them to eat, because hunger waits for no one, and the day will be long. In wealthier homes, the scene shifts slightly. The bread is finer, white flour instead of coarse rye. Butter glistens on the table. Honey drips from combs. Preserved fruits gleam in jars. Silver spoons stir steaming cups of tea or coffee. Porcelain bowls cradle eggs, soft-boiled to perfection. The table becomes a stage, each dish a performance of prosperity. Yet even here, beneath the polish, the same truth remains. Breakfast is necessity, first pleasure, second. Once the bowls are emptied, once the last crumbs are brushed from the table, the ritual is complete. Stomachs are not full, not satisfied in the modern sense, but they are steadied. The day may be endured now, carried forward on bread and beer, porridge and tea. Hunger will return, By midday it will gnaw at you again, but for the moment, you are ready. And as you wipe your mouth with the back of your hand, push your bench from the table, and stand, you know this, breakfast has done its work. It has not delighted, it has not indulged, but it has fortified, and in this world, fortification is the best one can ask of the morning meal. When thirst presses against your throat in this world, the simplest answer is also the most dangerous: water. Clear, abundant, flowing from wells, streams, and pumps. It looks harmless enough, but to drink it straight is to gamble with your life. The water carries what eyes cannot see: waste seeping from privies, runoff from livestock pens, filth washed in from gutters and drains. It might sparkle in the jug, cool in the cup, but the sickness it brings announces itself days later, long after the first sip. For those who live in crowded towns, water is drawn from communal pumps, their handles slick with the touch of dozens of hands each morning. Buckets clatter, splashing over cobblestones already dark with mud. The liquid that pours out is cloudy, more often than clear, with floating specks you'd rather not name. Housewives glance at it, shrug, and carry it home. Because what choice do they have? Without water, there is no boiling, no cooking, no washing. Its danger is acknowledged, but its necessity overrules. Country wells are little better. Dug deep, lined with wood or stone, they promise purity, but seldom deliver. A careless neighbor empties a chamber pot too close to the edge, and the seepage creeps downward. A dead animal falls in unnoticed, fouling the source for weeks. Some families whisper charms or mutter prayers as they lower their buckets, hoping that faith might succeed where cleanliness fails. The body craves water, but the mind remembers cholera, dysentery, and fevers that sweep through entire households. So instead, people turn to what seems safer: beer. Not the rich, bitter drink of taverns today, but small beer, brewed in every home, consumed at every meal. Its alcohol content is low, barely enough to dull the senses, but it is sufficient to kill the unseen threats lurking in unboiled water. Beer is safety disguised as custom. The brewing itself is a daily labor. Grain is soaked, mashed, boiled with hops, if available, then left to ferment in barrels or casks. The smell fills the house, yeasty, sour, faintly sweet. Children grow up surrounded by it, the scent of brewing as familiar as the smoke from the hearth. By morning, mugs are filled with a cloudy liquid, slightly sour on the tongue, not refreshing but reliable. Even toddlers are given sips, their small bodies trained early to trust beer over water. At the breakfast table, small beer replaces milk for most. At midday, workers carry jugs into fields or workshops, stopping to gulp it between tasks. In the evening, the same mugs are filled again, steadying hunger and washing down coarse bread. It is not celebration, not indulgence, it is survival in liquid form. Stronger beers exist too, brewed for feasts, fairs, or the wealthier households. These carry a deeper color, a heavier body, and enough alcohol to warm the chest and blur the edges of the day. But such brews are not for every morning. They are treats, rewards for labor well done, excuses for gatherings, where laughter grows louder as mugs are refilled. Alehouses thrive on this culture. Their benches creak beneath the weight of men who come not only to drink but to escape, if only briefly, the weight of home and work. Here, beer is more than sustenance. It is conversation, community, escape. The air grows thick with smoke, voices rise and fall, and mugs clink together in rhythms older than memory. Yet beer is not without its critics. Preachers rail against it, condemning drunkenness as sin. Physicians warn of beer bellies and sluggishness, though their cautions compete with their own reliance on ale as safer than water. Wives scold husbands for stumbling home late, pockets emptied into the brewer's till. But scolding never ends the brewing. It cannot. The alternative is thirst, or worse. Wine exists too, though it belongs to another class. Imported, expensive, poured at tables where silver gleams and candles burn late into the evening. It is less about quenching thirst than displaying status. To serve wine is to declare wealth. To serve beer is to declare sense. Water, unboiled, declares only desperation. Children grow up knowing this instinctively. They drink small beer as naturally as breathing, their lips stained with froth before they can even walk. By adolescence, stronger brews slip into their hands at festivals, and by adulthood, beer is as common as bread. The body adjusts, tolerates, depends on it. To go without feels unnatural, even dangerous, and yet water is never absent. It remains lurking in every basin, every jug. You need it to wash, to cook, to brew. You dip your cloth in it, rinse your vegetables with it, stir it into soups that simmer long enough to banish its threats. You never forget its danger, but you cannot live without it. Its presence is a quiet tension, a reminder that the simplest things are often the most treacherous. On hot days, when thirst gnaws and sweat drips, you might risk it. You lower your bucket into the well, draw up the cool, clear liquid, and drink deeply. The relief is immediate, almost euphoric. For a few moments, nothing else matters. Then hours later, a cramp twists your belly, a fever flares in your skin, and you curse your weakness. The water never forgives, so you learn the lesson all over again. The next morning, you reach for beer, cloudy and sour though it is, and raise the mug to your lips. You drink not for pleasure, not for escape, but for safety. The bitterness coats your tongue, the heaviness sits in your stomach, and you remind yourself that here, survival does not always taste sweet. When the first hunger of the morning is dulled, the day soon reminds you of its deeper truth. Food does not appear by magic. It must be fetched, bargained for, hauled home, and so you make your way to the market. The market is not a single place, but a collection of sensations. You hear it before you see it. The cries of sellers advertising wares, the clatter of carts unloading produce, the bleating of sheep penned too close to the bread stall. The air is thick, layered with smells that clash and compete. The sweetness of ripe fruit, the brine of salted fish, the acrid smoke of roasting meat, the sour stench of cabbage left too long in the sun. One scent alone might entice, but altogether they overwhelm. The stalls themselves are ramshackle, planks balanced on barrels, cloth canopies sagging under drizzle or sun. Goods spill across rough boards, baskets of onions, carrots still clotted with earth, loaves of bread stacked in towers that lean precariously. Some sellers arrange their wares neatly, proud of every turnip and apple. Others dump them in heaps, daring customers to pick through. The cobblestones beneath are slippery with straw and mud, ground soft by the endless shuffle of feet. Noise dominates. A butcher shouts prices for fresh cuts, his apron spattered crimson. A fishwife yells louder still, slapping her catch against the table as proof of freshness. Peddlers weave through the crowd with trays of pies or roasted nuts, their voices rising above the din. Somewhere, a fiddler scrapes at a tune, hoping coins will fall into his cap. Children dart between stalls, hands quick as sparrows, testing whether an apple can vanish before anyone notices. The food itself reflects the season. In summer, berries stain fingers purple, melons split open to release their perfume. Herbs spill from bundles tied with twine. In autumn, the market glows with squash and gourds, their skins mottled orange and green, while barrels of apples perfume the air with sweetness tinged by rot. Winter strips the color away, cabbages stacked high, potatoes dirt brown salted meats, hanging stiff as boards. By spring the stalls fill again with greens, tender shoots and the first fragile eggs. Not all food is fresh. Much of it is preserved, fish salted until it shines white, meat smoked until black at the edges, cheeses hardened to the density of stone. Grain arrives in sacks, sometimes infested with beetles, though most households sift them out without complaint. Spices appear in small packets, rare and costly, guarded as carefully as coin. A pinch of pepper can lift a stew, A trace of cinnamon can disguise the sourness of old ale. Haggling is expected. You do not simply hand over money, you perform the ritual of complaint. Too small, you say, weighing a cabbage in your hand. Bruised, you remark, pointing at an apple's blemish. The seller rolls eyes, protests loudly, but shaves a penny from the price. Both of you know the dance, both of you play your part, and when coins change hands, it is as much for the theatre as the product. Money itself is scarce, so barter thrives. A farmer might exchange eggs for candles. A weaver offers cloth for fish. A blacksmith trades nails for grain. Each negotiation is a small drama, neighbors weighing trust against necessity. Some carry tokens of credit, promises scribbled on scraps of parchment or carved into wood, redeemable when harvest comes or wages are paid. Others simply keep tally in memory, debts and favors woven into the fabric of community. The market is not only about food, it is about news. Here you learn who has fallen ill, who is married, whose cow has calved, whose roof has collapsed. Rumors pass faster than coins, carried from one stall to the next in whispers and shouts. A man selling onions may lean close and mutter about rising bread prices. A woman weighing cheese tells you of soldiers marching on the next town. The market feeds not only the stomach but the mind, binding the community together through stories as much as goods. For the poor, choices are few. They hover at the edges, buying bruised fruit, broken loaves, fish heads left after the best cuts are sold. Sellers may lower prices as the day wanes, preferring to earn a few pennies rather than carry goods home unsold. Some scrape together enough for a scrap of salted herring, a crust of bread, a handful of beans. Others linger until darkness, hoping to scavenge what is dropped or abandoned. The wealthy move differently. Servants come on their behalf, baskets lined with clean cloth, purchasing the best cuts, the freshest produce, the finest spices. Their purses are heavier, their bargaining softer, their voices more confident. They never reach for bruised fruit or stale bread. Their meals will be served with variety, their tables spread wide, their stomachs filled without thought of tomorrow's hunger. Animals are part of the market too. Chickens squawk from wicker cages, feathers drifting into the air. Geese honk indignantly as boys tug them by cords tied around their necks. Pigs squeal, hooves skidding on the stones, while larger animals, cows, sheep, horses, are tethered nearby, their smell drifting through the stalls. Meat here is not abstract. It is alive, breathing, looking at you with wide eyes before it is sold. By midday, the market grows hotter, noisier, denser. Flies swarm around the fish, settling on their glassy eyes. Dogs nose through refuse at the edges, tails wagging when scraps fall. A thief is caught, his wrist twisted until he yelps, and the crowd erupts in equal parts, scorn and sympathy. The air feels thick, pulsing with heat, sweat, and the press of bodies. When your basket is finally filled, bread hard but serviceable, a wedge of cheese pungent, a handful of onions sharp, you turn toward home. Your arms ache with the weight, but there is a strange satisfaction too. These humble goods will be stretched, boiled, roasted, preserved. They will sustain, and as you step away from the market square, the noise fading behind you, you understand why people return day after day. Not because the food is fine, not because the smells are sweet, but because this is survival's theatre. Here, hunger and supply meet in open air, bartered with words and coins, bound together by the endless hum of life, pressing forward. Walking through the town, you cannot escape the truth. The place itself seems determined to make you ill. Every step is a reminder that the line between health and sickness here is thin, fragile, and easily crossed. The streets are the first culprit. Cobblestones uneven and slick with muck force you to watch your footing. Open drains run along the edges, shallow channels where household waste flows freely. Dishwater clouded with grease, chamber pots emptied with careless splashes, and dye runoff from nearby workshops. On warm days, the stench rises in waves, sharp, sour, unmistakable, Flies gather in black clouds, their buzz relentless, their wings glistening as they swarm from refuse to food stalls and back again. Waste management is more theory than practice. Night soil collectors trudge through alleys with carts, scooping from cesspits, hauling buckets of human waste out of yards. Their work is necessary, but seldom thorough. Spills streak the ground, sloshing as they pass. Sometimes, pits overflow entirely, seeping into soil, creeping toward wells. You pass one and gag, pulling your sleeve over your nose, though the fabric does little to block the assault. Rats flourish in this environment. They dart from shadows, plump and confident, their fur slick with filth. They scurry beneath carts, climb piles of refuse, vanish into cracks in foundations. Cats chase them, but never enough. The rats thrive too well, multiplying faster than any predator can manage. People shrug at their presence, mutter about bad omens, but accept them as part of life. Few realize what dangers ride on their backs. Water supplies, too, are suspect. Pumps stand in squares, their handles polished by countless hands. Buckets splash into troughs, drawing liquid that looks clear, but tastes faintly metallic, earthy. Some wells reek faintly of rot, the smell of seepage from unseen sources. Still, families fill their jugs, because water is essential, and faith must make up for what purity lacks. When sickness spreads, neighbors point fingers. That pump is cursed, they say, or that well runs foul, but by then it is too late. The air carries its own threats. In winter, smoke hangs low, trapped by fog, filling lungs with soot. Chimneys belch endlessly, leaving walls blackened and throats raw. On damp days, the smell of mildew clings to clothes and skin. When the wind shifts, it carries odors from tanneries, acrid stings of urine and lime, or from slaughterhouses, where blood seeps into gutters and mingles with rain. People cough constantly, phlegm rattling in their chests, but few consider it abnormal. Coughing is simply part of life. Epidemics come swiftly and without mercy. One week the streets bustle as always, the next doors are marked with chalk, entire families struck down. Cholera strikes first with cramps, then floods the body until dehydration shrivels the skin. Typhus spreads silently, fevers climbing, delirium whispering in overheated minds. Smallpox scars faces, blinds eyes, steals children before parents can even bargain with prayer. The plague is the most feared, though even whispers of it are enough to empty markets, shut-ins, send neighbors scurrying indoors. Superstition thrives in the gaps of understanding. Some insist sickness seeps from foul air, miasmas rising from filth and decay. They carry posies of herbs, vinegar-soaked cloths, pomanders stuffed with spices, believing these will shield them from unseen vapors. Others claim disease is punishment, divine retribution for sin. Prayers, fasting, pilgrimages, these are as common as medicines, often more so. When a fever strikes, the choice is simple: appeal to heaven, or hope your body withstands what remedies cannot. Hospitals, such as they exist, are not sanctuaries, but warnings. Their halls reek of sweat, blood, and despair. Beds are crowded, patients packed side by side, separated only by thin curtains. Surgeons move briskly, their aprons stained, their tools wiped hastily on cloth. Bleeding, blistering, purging. These are the treatments, harsh attempts to rebalance humors or expel imagined poisons. Few leave healthier than they arrive. Many leave shrouded. The poor fare worst, but even the wealthy are not immune. They retreat to country estates when plague spreads, but disease follows, carried by servants, by travelers, by unseen contagion clinging to fabrics. Physicians prescribe costly tonics, mixtures of wine, mercury, or exotic herbs, but their effects are dubious at best. Wealth buys comfort, not immunity. Everyday hazards compound the larger ones. Cuts fester quickly, even small ones from kitchen knives or work tools. A splinter may swell until the hand stiffens, fever creeping upward. Burns from the hearth blister, open to infection. Childbirth is fraught with danger. mothers weakened by blood loss, infants succumbing to infections unseen. The line between living and dying is so thin it feels like a draft through an open window. Even the food can betray you. Meat spoils quickly, crawling with maggots within days. Milk sours by afternoon, leaving bellies twisting in pain. Bread, if kept too long, grows a coat of mold that some scrape away, while others ignore entirely. Fish, once fresh, becomes perilous almost immediately, its odor sharp and unmistakable. Stomachs here grow used to discomfort, but poisoning lurks constantly at the table. And yet, life continues. People rise each day, draw water, light fires, send children into streets that swarm with hazards. They adapt, normalize, endure. They complain about the smell, but not enough to leave. They cough through the smoke, scratch at flea bites, shrug at the rats. Because here to live is to accept risk, to pretend the dangers are background noise, rather than ever-present threats. Still, as you walk home from the market, basket in hand, the reminders are everywhere. A child sits, slumped against a doorway, his face pale, lips cracked. A woman scrubs the stoop with vinegar, muttering prayers under her breath. A cart rattles by, covered in canvas, the shape beneath unmistakable. People glance, look away quickly, and return to their errands. Life and death intermingle so often that neither halts the rhythm of the street for long. You lift your hand to your mouth, covering a cough you didn't notice before. The air tastes of smoke and damp earth. You wonder briefly whether the cough will fade or deepen, whether it will vanish with the morning or settle in your lungs until it carves weeks from your life. Here, such questions have no certain answer. Only time tells, and time is not always generous. When sickness takes hold, when the cough does not fade or the fever refuses to break, you turn reluctantly toward medicine. Not medicine as you might know it now. Measured doses, sterile rooms, clear diagnoses, but a patchwork of tradition, speculation, and trial by painful error. Here, the practice of healing is as uncertain as the diseases it seeks to fight. The foundation of most treatment is the theory of humors. The body, physicians insist, is balanced between four fluids: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Illness is not caused by invisible organisms but by imbalance. Too much of one humor, too little of another. Remedies aim not to target disease, but to restore harmony. If you burn with fever, you have excess blood. If you cough with congestion, phlegm has taken hold. If you sink into melancholy, black bile weighs you down. Each symptom becomes a puzzle to be solved by subtraction or addition. Bleeding is the most common answer. A physician or sometimes a barber produces a small blade or a set of leeches, and the cure begins. A shallow cut along the arm, a vein opened, the blood allowed to flow into a bowl. You sit pale and dizzy, hoping that the draining of fluid will drain away your sickness too. If the malady is severe, more blood is drawn, sometimes until you faint, sometimes until life itself ebbs dangerously low. Leeches offer a slower alternative, their slimy bodies latching onto skin, swelling as they siphon. Patients endure the tickling sensation, grimacing as the creatures writhe. The physician nods with satisfaction. Balance, he assures, will soon be restored. Purging is another favored cure. To cleanse the stomach and bowels is to cleanse the body, or so it is believed. Harsh laxatives are mixed from herbs or minerals, brewed into bitter draughts that empty the body with ruthless efficiency. Emetics provoke vomiting, the patient hunched over a basin, retching until nothing remains. The logic is simple: if illness lingers within, force it out. The suffering is part of the remedy. Blistering follows the same philosophy. Mustard plasters, caustic ointments, or even heated irons are applied to the skin, raising blisters, drawing out imagined poisons. The pain is sharp, the burns severe, but the marks are worn almost proudly, evidence that the sickness has been confronted. Families whisper encouragement. Better the pain now than the grave later. Herbal remedies weave through all of this, a gentler counterpart to harsher measures. Chamomile for stomach complaints, willow bark for pain, sage for sore throats. Apothecaries grind roots and leaves into powders, mix them with honey to disguise the bitterness, and sell them in small packets. Some work, though no one understands why, while others are little more than superstition dressed in green. A sprig of rosemary is tied around the neck to ward off plague. Garlic is hung at windows to repel fevers. Vinegar is sniffed to purify the air. The line between medicine and magic blurs easily. Opium creeps into practice as well. Tinctures like laudanum, a potent mixture of opium and alcohol, soothe pain and calm restless sleep. A few drops quiet a cough, ease a stomach, or lull a child into slumber. But the relief is fleeting, the dependence insidious. Patients return to apothecaries again and again, chasing the same numbness, unaware of the chains forming quietly around them. Surgery exists, though it terrifies more than it comforts. There is no anesthesia, no antiseptic, no sterile field. A broken bone may be set with splints. But if the break is severe, amputation is often the only solution. A man is seated, his limb bound, and the surgeon works quickly, sawing through flesh and bone while assistants hold the patient down. The screams echo, fade to sobs, sometimes fade entirely into silence. Infection almost always follows, the wound blackening, the fever rising. Survival is a coin toss, one many lose. Dentistry falls to barbers, as often as to physicians. A toothache is met with pliers or forceps, the offending molar yanked free in a single violent motion. No numbing, no care beyond speed. Patients leave clutching bloody cloths to their jaws, grateful only that the pain of removal overshadows the pain that came before. Childbirth is its own battlefield. Midwives attend with experience, rather than training, guiding mothers through labor with whispered prayers and herbal brews. They know the risks well: hemorrhage, infection, stillbirth. Sometimes they succeed, and joy floods the household. Other times, silence follows the wails, and mothers are buried within days of delivering life. Physicians are summoned only when matters grow dire, their interventions often rough, sometimes fatal. Quacks thrive in this uncertainty. Traveling healers peddle miracle, cures from carts, powders that promise to cleanse the blood, syrups to banish coughs, ointments to cure everything from baldness to plague. Their bottles glisten in the sunlight, their words roll smooth, their claims impossible to disprove in the moment. People buy them anyway, desperate for hope, willing to gamble coin on even the thinnest chance of survival. And through it all, faith weaves tightly into medicine. Churches bless waters, saints are invoked, relics pressed to fevered brows. Pilgrimages are undertaken in hopes of healing. The boundary between prayer and treatment is thin, often indistinguishable. For many, the doctor's bleeding and the priest's blessing feel like two sides of the same coin. Both might fail, but both are worth trying. The outcome of treatment is unpredictable. Sometimes the bleeding does seem to cool a fever, the herbal tea to soothe a cough. Sometimes a surgery saves a limb, a tonic revives an appetite. But just as often, the cure accelerates the decline. A patient weakened by purging slips away, a wound dressed with dirty cloth festers. A child quieted by opium never wakes. Families accept these losses with weary resignation. It was God's will, they say, or the sickness was too strong. Rarely does anyone blame the physician outright. After all, what else is there to try? Medicine here is not certainty, but ritual. It is the attempt, the gesture, the hope that something will work. Each cut, each sip, each prayer is a small defiance against the vast ignorance surrounding disease. And when you lie in bed, sweating through fever, or sit hunched with a cough that rattles your ribs, you cling to the belief that someone, somewhere, knows what to do. Because without that hope, there is only acceptance, and acceptance in this world comes far too easily. Sickness here is never far away. It lingers in the air you breathe, clings to the food you eat, creeps silently into the water you drink. Most of the time it hides, waiting, striking with little warning. One day you rise for work, strong enough to carry your basket or your tools. The next you are bent double, unable to stand, shivering as sweat and fever battle inside your body. The everyday ailments are harsh enough. Stomach troubles, what people call the flux, send whole households to their beds. buckets kept close as cramps twist and drain. Children in particular suffer, their small bodies too fragile to withstand the relentless dehydration. Coughs linger for weeks, rattling lungs until the chest aches with every breath. Joints swell, fevers burn, headaches pulse behind eyes, unused to relief. Each symptom might be survivable alone, but here nothing comes alone. Illness compounds, weakens, strikes again before strength can return. When outbreaks arrive, the fear is immediate, sharp and tumule. Cholera spreads first through whispers, 2 children dead at the pump, a whole family struck in the night. The disease moves faster than understanding, draining bodies dry in hours. Neighbors bar doors, avoid the pump, but the sickness seeps outward all the same. By the time officials mark houses with chalk, the contagion has already leapt into another street. Typhus follows a different path, carried by lice. It thrives in crowded houses, in the seams of clothes seldom washed. The fever builds slowly, day by day, until the patient burns red, mutters nonsense, claws at sheets in delirium. Those who recover are haunted by the visions they saw while hovering between life and death. Those who don't are carried out, wrapped quickly, buried with prayers whispered faster than tears can fall. Smallpox is cruel in its own way. It begins with chills and aches, no different from many fevers. Then the rash appears, small red spots spreading across the skin, hardening into blisters, oozing, scabbing. The face swells until it is unrecognizable. Some survive, but their faces remain marked for life, scars like maps of their suffering. Others lose their sight entirely, the infection searing through their eyes, and many never rise again. Their bodies overcome by the relentless spread of the disease. The plague is worst of all, the word itself enough to chill hearts. It arrives with little warning, the swelling of buboes underarms, and at the groin tender and blackened, the fever rising like a storm. Death follows quickly, sometimes within days, sometimes within hours. Whole streets fall silent, doors locked, families gone. Officials drive carts through alleys, calling for the dead to be brought out, their voices heavy with dread. Those who survive tell of the silence that follows. Empty houses, abandoned shops, grass growing between stones where footsteps once echoed. Illness does not stop at the poor. The wealthy retreat to estates, hoping distance will protect them. But sickness travels easily. Servants carry it, visitors spread it, contaminated goods slip through gates. Doctors may be summoned, bringing costly remedies of herbs, wine, and precious metals. But their knowledge is limited. Disease respects no coin, no title, no prayer more fervent than another. Superstitions grow in the cracks, left by ignorance. Some blame comets, others blame foul air, others still whisper of witchcraft. Fires are lit in the streets to cleanse the air, smoke billowing into lungs already raw. Vinegar is sprinkled on floors, herbs hung in doorways, charms tied to wrists and bedposts. The afflicted are sometimes shunned, their homes avoided, their belongings burned. Fear isolates even as it spreads, yet there is also compassion. Neighbors bring broth to the sick, even when it risks their own health. Midwives sit by fevered mothers, holding hands through hours of delirium. Priests visit the dying, murmuring prayers, anointing foreheads with oil, their own lives placed quietly in jeopardy. Children fetch water for parents, too weak to rise, though the water itself may worsen the illness. In the darkest outbreaks, these small acts of loyalty shine most brightly, fragile flames, against overwhelming night. Death becomes familiar. Funerals multiply until bells toll constantly, their mournful sound merging with the rhythm of daily life. Gravediggers labor without pause, lowering bodies into pits, hastily dug. Coffins may be simple boards nailed together, or in times of great loss, bodies wrapped in shrouds and buried together. Grief cannot keep pace. There are too many names to remember, too many goodbyes to speak. Survivors carry the marks of what they've endured, a limp from fever-swollen joints, pockmarks etched deep into cheeks, hair that never grows back after illness. Even when health returns, it is incomplete, leaving behind echoes of what was lost, and the fear lingers, whispering each time someone coughs in the market, each time a child stumbles with sudden fever. Still, life presses forward, the sick are tended, the dead are buried, the living rise to face another day. Markets reopen, bells ring for weddings, as well as funerals, laughter breaks out in taverns despite the risk. Humanity adapts, normalizes, insists on joy even when shadows loom. But the memory of outbreaks never fades. Each one leaves behind a scar, etched not only on bodies but on whole communities. When you lie in bed at night, scratching at an insect bite, or sip ale to quench thirst, or walk past the pump in the square, the thought remains illness could come tomorrow, next week, next season. It is never truly gone. It waits, it watches, it chooses its moment, and all you can do is hope that when it comes, your body, your family, your household will be strong enough to endure. Because here, survival is never guaranteed, not from war, not from hunger, and certainly not from disease. For many, the only place to wash more than a face or hands is not at home, but in the bathhouse. These buildings, scattered across towns and cities, are less sanctuaries of luxury and more communal necessities, places where water, warmth, and privacy are rationed by coin. The bathhouse announces itself from afar, a haze of steam curls from vents, carrying with it the mingled scents of soap, sweat, and damp wood. The air outside is warmer than the street, drawing in those weary from cold winds. Inside, voices echo off stone walls, a constant murmur of chatter, splashing, and laughter. The sound is lively, almost cheerful, but it masks the discomforts that lie within. The entrance is plain, a small counter, a matron or keeper collecting coins and directing visitors. Prices vary, cheaper for the simplest wash, higher if you want hot water or a private stall. Few can afford privacy. Most strip in the communal chamber, hanging clothes on pegs, folding them onto benches, or leaving them in the care of attendants who promise, not always honestly, to guard them. Standing there half-naked among neighbors, colleagues, and strangers is awkward, but modesty bends under necessity. The first shock comes with the water itself. Large wooden tubs line the room, filled from barrels hauled in from pumps or wells. Heating it requires firewood, always costly, so most of the baths are lukewarm at best. Only a few steam gently, reserved for those who can pay extra. The rest are cool, sometimes downright cold, but no one complains loudly. Water is water, and water enough to submerge the whole body is rare. You lower yourself in slowly, wincing at the chill. The water is murky, already clouded by the dirt and oils of earlier bathers. Bits of straw, hair, and soap curds float on the surface, bobbing like reminders that you are not alone. Yet you sink down anyway, because to feel your body enveloped, after so long in wool and grime, is its own small relief. Soap is provided in lumps, harsh and sharp-smelling. Made from animal fat and lye, it bites into skin as much as it cleans it. You rub it into your arms and legs, feeling the sting in every small cut or scrape. The lather is thin, quickly diluted in the already dirty water. Still, the ritual matters more than the result. Scrubbing is as much about reassurance, telling yourself you are clean, as it is about hygiene. Communal tools circulate. Wooden brushes with stiff bristles are passed hand to hand, scraping away dead skin until red patches bloom. Some prefer to scrub each other's backs, chatting as they work, gossiping about neighbors or news. The intimacy is uncomfortable at first, but soon it feels natural. The bathhouse is not just about washing, it is about being part of a community. Here secrets are traded as often as soap. Steam rooms exist in some bathhouses, small chambers heated with stoves or stones doused in water. You step inside, and the air presses heavy against your chest. Sweat beads instantly, dripping down your skin, mingling with the grime you came to escape. The heat feels cleansing, almost spiritual. Some believe the vapor drives illness out, that sweat itself is a form of healing. You endure until you can no longer breathe easily, then stumble out, flushed and weak, but somehow lighter. Privacy is scarce. Thin partitions separate stalls, but voices carry and glances stray. Families may bathe together, children splashing noisily, while parents try to maintain order. Strangers share tubs, their limbs brushing accidentally, their laughter covering awkwardness. Not everyone is comfortable with the exposure, but few alternatives exist. To avoid the bathhouse entirely is to accept filth, and that is harder still. Of course, the bathhouse carries its own dangers. Skin infections spread easily, carried in the water, or passed by shared tools. Lice and fleas, washed from one head, find their way onto another. Some whisper that diseases lurk in the steam, waiting to settle into weakened lungs. Physicians sometimes warn against overbathing, insisting that open pores invite sickness. But for most, the benefit outweighs the risk. Not all patrons are there to wash. Bathhouses attract traders, gamblers, even thieves. Deals are struck in the steam, coins exchanged under dripping rafters. Cards and dice appear in corners, laughter and arguments rising in equal measure. Prostitutes ply their trade here too, offering warmth of a different kind, their presence tolerated by keepers who know the coins they bring. Respectable patrons may frown, but all continue bathing. The bathhouse does not judge, it simply hosts. When you emerge, skin rubbed raw, hair damp and heavy, you feel strangely renewed. Your clothes, once pulled back on, cling uncomfortably at first, the fabric rough against freshly scoured skin. Yet there is satisfaction in it. You walk differently, lighter, as though the layers of dirt had weighed more than you realized. For a day or two, perhaps 3, you will feel fresher, cleaner, less burdened by the constant itch of grime. But the relief never lasts. By the time you return home, smoke from the hearth has already begun to settle into your hair again. By nightfall, sweat dampens the chemise beneath your stays, and dust creeps in through cracks in the door. Within a week, sometimes less, you feel the weight return, the itch of your scalp, the stiffness of unwashed cloth, and once again you look toward the bathhouse, balancing the cost, the effort, the embarrassment against the brief gift of cleanliness. For all its flaws, for the cloudy water, the risk of contagion, the lack of privacy, the bathhouse remains one of the few places where dirt can truly be challenged. It is not perfection, not even close, but it is something, a chance to strip away, if only for a short while, the constant grime of this life. And that is reason enough to return, again and again. If there is one task that defines drudgery in this world, it is laundry. Not because it is done often, quite the opposite, but because when it comes, it consumes entire days, leaving hands raw, backs bent, and tempers frayed. Clean clothes are not a constant expectation. They are a luxury purchased with sweat, smoke, and lie. The process begins long before the first shirt touches water. Fires must be lit, wood gathered, kettles dragged into place. Water is hauled in buckets from pumps, wells, or rivers, each trip a labor in itself. Dozens of gallons are needed, far more than any single person can comfortably carry. By the time enough has been gathered, arms ache, shoulders burn, and the day has barely begun. The first boiling is for linens, the shifts, chemises, and undergarments that sit closest to skin. These are the foulest, stiff with sweat, oils, and the secret filth no one likes to name. They are stuffed into great copper tubs, covered with water, and sprinkled generously with soap shavings. The soap is no dainty bar, but a rough, yellowish block, sharp with the smell of fat and caustic lye. Shavings sting the eyes and nose as they dissolve, filling the room with a biting, acrid odor. The clothes are stirred with wooden paddles, plunged and lifted, turned again and again in the boiling water. Steam rises thick, dampening hair, clinging to walls, dripping from beams. The heat is suffocating, the work relentless. After half an hour, the garments are hauled out, dripping and scalding, into waiting tubs of cooler water. There, they are beaten, pounded with wooden bats, scrubbed against ridged boards, twisted and wrung, until dirt seeps out in cloudy swirls. Stains are attacked with mixtures of vinegar, urine, or chalk. Yes, urine. Collected in jugs from chamber pots, it is prized for its ammonia, a natural bleaching agent. Workers wrinkle their noses, muttering complaints, but apply it all the same, dabbing yellow liquid onto collars, cuffs, or patches darkened with grease. The smell is horrific, but once rinsed and dried, the garments appear a shade cleaner, and that is enough to justify the indignity. Outer garments, less frequently washed, demand equal attention when their turn comes. Wool coats and petticoats cannot endure harsh boiling, so they are soaked instead, beaten and wrung, then brushed while damp to restore their nap. The water grows dark quickly, heavy with soot and dust that had clung unnoticed until now. By the end, the tub resembles a pond after a storm, thick with floating scum. The work does not end with washing. Rinsing must be repeated several times, each requiring new buckets of water carried from the well. Then comes wringing, twisting fabric until arms shake, water streaming onto floors, splashing shoes, soaking skirts. Muscles ache from the endless strain, yet the piles of damp cloth seem never to diminish. Drying is its own trial. In summer, garments are hung outdoors, pegged to lines, fluttering in the breeze. But in winter, when frost clings and the sun hides, they are draped indoors across ropes, strung near the hearth. The heat dries them unevenly, leaving some patches stiff, others still damp after days. The smell of smoke clings to everything, mingling with the sharp bite of soap, so that clean never smells truly fresh, only less offensive. Once dry, garments must be ironed. Irons here are not sleek, electric devices, but heavy lumps of metal heated directly on coals. Each weighs several pounds, its handle wrapped in cloth to prevent burns. They must be reheated constantly, switched out when they cool. A careless slip scorches fabric instantly, leaving a permanent mark, a black triangle where linen once shone white. The work is sweaty, repetitive, demanding. Women lean over boards, pressing sleeves and collars into submission, while children pump bellows at the fire to keep irons hot. All of this is done, not weekly, not even bi-weekly, but when necessity demands. Clothes are worn until they cannot be borne. Linen shirts stiff with sweat, stockings grey with dirt, shifts sour with days of wear. Only then is the washing day declared. Families plan for it, dreading it, knowing it will consume their strength. Neighbors often join together, pooling labor, gossiping as they beat cloth against stones by the riverbank, hands red from cold water and friction. The poor manage with fewer garments, which means washing is more frequent but also more desperate. A laborer may own only 2 shirts, one to wear, one to wash. When the clean one is not yet dry, he dons the damp one, shivering as it clings to skin. Wealthier families boast piles of linens, dozens of shirts, chemises, and stockings. Their laundresses toil endlessly, scrubbing through mountains of fabric, boiling pot after pot, until smoke blackens the rafters. The work is invisible but relentless, hidden labor behind polished appearances. Soap itself is a guarded commodity. In cities, chandlers sell it by weight, cutting chunks from great blocks, their shops reeking of tallow. Country households often make their own, rendering animal fat, mixing it with lye leached from wood ash, boiling it until it hardens into rough slabs. The process is dangerous. The lye burns skin on contact, but necessary. Without soap, laundry is little more than soaking, and filth never truly leaves. Children sometimes help, but more often they hinder, splashing in tubs, tangling clotheslines, playing with the bats meant for pounding. Mothers scold, but laughter slips through too. Laundry day is exhausting, but it is also communal, filled with chatter, songs, even the occasional joke shouted across steaming tubs. For all its misery, it is also a rhythm of life, a pulse shared by every household. By evening, the yard or house is transformed. Lines sag with damp garments, steam clings to ceilings, The floor is slick with puddles. The workers themselves are soaked, hair plastered to foreheads, arms streaked with suds, fingernails softened and pale. Exhaustion settles deep in bones. Supper, when it comes, tastes better for the labor, though muscles throb with every movement. When the clothes are finally folded, stacked in piles, a small pride emerges. Shirts are whiter, shifts smell less foul, stockings feel lighter against the skin. The next morning, slipping into clean linen, you feel briefly renewed, as though you have put on not just fabric, but dignity. The effect fades quickly, dirt returning almost at once, but for that fleeting moment, the effort feels worthwhile. And so, despite the misery, laundry will be done again and again, because in a world where grime is constant, where sweat, soot, and sickness cling to every surface, the act of washing is more than cleanliness. It is defiance. It is proof that, however briefly, you can push back against the dirt that defines life here. Once dressed and fed, there is little pause before the day's true weight begins. Work is not a choice here. It is the rhythm that dictates every hour of life. From the moment the sun rises to the moment it sets, bodies bend, hands ache, and sweat soaks through fabric. Survival demands it. For those in the countryside, the fields are both workplace and prison. At dawn, tools are lifted, hoes, scythes, sickles, each heavy with use. Their wooden handles polished smooth by generations of calloused palms. The soil is turned by hand, clods broken apart, seeds pressed into furrows. Each motion is repetitive, but none are easy. The earth resists, rocks lurk beneath the surface. Weeds reclaim every cleared space. Backs bend for hours, spines stiffen, shoulders burn. By midday, sweat streaks through the dust, leaving skin gritty and raw. Harvest is worse still. Scythes swing in wide arcs, the swish of blades cutting through grain, echoed by the grunt of bodies, laboring under the weight of sheaves. Hands blister, blood mixing with chaff. Yet the work cannot stop. Crops must be gathered quickly, before rain ruins them or rot sets in. Entire families join, men, women, children, each binding stalks, lifting bundles, stacking them into wagons. The rhythm is relentless, broken only by brief gulps of ale or bites of bread. In towns, labor takes different forms, but no less toll. Blacksmiths hammer iron until sparks dance like fireflies, the air thick with heat, soot streaking faces until they shine black. Apprentices pump bellows endlessly, arms trembling, sweat dripping onto the forge. The clang of metal reverberates through narrow streets, a constant heartbeat of industry. Weavers work in dim rooms, hunched over looms that creak with every shift. The air is filled with fibers, floating motes that lodge in throats and lungs, leaving coughs that never disappear. Fingers bleed from snags. Eyes strain against poor light, but the shuttle must keep moving, thread after thread, or wages vanish. Tanners labor at the edge of towns, their yards reeking of urine, lime and rotting hides. They strip skins, soak them in pits, scrape away flesh with knives dulled by repetition. The stench clings to their bodies so fiercely that neighbors cross the street to avoid them. Yet without their work, leather for shoes, belts and harnesses would disappear. They endure exile by smell, trading comfort for coin. Miners dig deep into earth, hacking at stone with picks, hauling baskets of ore to the surface. The tunnels are dark, air thin, walls groaning ominously. Dust settles in lungs, leaving men coughing black. Collapses are common, lamps sputter out, and lives are buried without warning. Still, families send sons underground, because the wages, though small, mean survival above. Women's labor, often invisible, is no lighter. They spend hours over hearths, turning coarse ingredients into edible meals. They spin thread, mend clothing, scrub floors, fetch water, tend gardens, care for children. Their days blur together in cycles of necessity, feeding, cleaning, sewing, nursing. The weight of it never lifts, and yet society seldom names it work. It is simply expected, a duty as binding as law. Children are not spared. Boys herd animals, carry wood, fetch water. Girls watch younger siblings, stir pots, learn the endless motions of spinning and sewing. Their hands grow rough, long before adulthood, their backs stooped from early burdens. Play exists, but it is snatched between tasks, brief laughter before another command summons them. Childhood is shorter here, truncated by necessity. In workshops, the division of labor becomes sharper, carpenters plane wood, until curls fall like shavings of light. Shoemakers stitch leather, with aching fingers, each pair of shoes the product of hours of patient work. Bakers rise before dawn, kneading dough until arms cramp, faces powdered white with flour, ovens roaring with heat. The smell of bread drifts into the streets, but so too does the sweat of labor. For the poorest, casual labor is the norm, hauling loads at the docks, sweeping refuse from alleys, carrying bricks for builders. The work is irregular, the pay uncertain, men wait at corners, hoping to be chosen for a day's employment, dreading the humiliation of being passed over. Hunger sharpens their patience, but not their luck. Work follows the seasons. In summer, fields blaze with heat, sweat soaking clothes until they cling. In winter, cold stiffens fingers until tools slip, breath steaming in frozen air. Rain turns roads to rivers, mud sucking at boots, yet the work cannot stop. Storms, droughts, floods, all threaten survival, all demand endurance. Wages seldom match effort. Payment comes in pennies, in bread, sometimes in credit, recorded on scraps of paper. Employers deduct for damaged goods, for tools provided, for mistakes made. Debt accumulates faster than coin, binding workers to masters like chains. Some escape through skill, saving enough to open small shops. Many never do, trapped in cycles of toil until bodies give out. And always, there is the toll on flesh. Calluses harden, skin cracks, joints ache, backs curve with years of bending. Eyesight fades from candlelight strain, lungs weaken from dust and smoke. Few grow old without bearing visible marks of their labor. Hands twisted by arthritis, shoulders stooped, teeth lost, skin toughened into leather, all testify to years of endurance. Yet work also binds communities. Harvests are shared, loaves exchanged, repairs done for neighbors. Singing fills fields, chants echo in workshops, jokes soften the rhythm of hammers. Pride emerges in skill, an iron gate forged straight, a dress stitched fine, a cart built sturdy. Though grueling, labor gives identity, a place within the vast web of survival. At the end of the day, workers return home weary, garments soaked, hands trembling from exhaustion. They slump by the fire, bowls of stew in hand, too tired for words. And yet, beneath the weight of fatigue lies a quiet certainty. Tomorrow the work will begin again, because it must. Here labor is not a path to wealth or ambition. It is the constant exchange of sweat for survival. The rhythm is endless, the body its tool and the earth its master. Childhood here is brief, fragile, and full of demands. There is no long period of carefree play, no endless years of protected innocence. From the moment a child can walk and carry, they are folded into the machinery of daily life, expected to shoulder tasks scaled to their size, shield to their size. At home, their duties are constant. A boy of 6 may be sent to fetch water, balancing a small jug against his chest, stumbling as the weight sloshes with each step. A girl not much older keeps an eye on younger siblings, coaxing them to silence, spooning porridge into their mouths while her mother tends to heavier chores. Firewood must be gathered, animals herded, scraps of cloth sorted for mending. Children's hands grow red from cold, raw from rope, blistered from tools. Play does exist, but it is stitched between labor. A hoop rolled down a street, a rag ball tossed in a muddy alley, chalk drawings sketched onto stone. Laughter rings out, but it is brief, interrupted by calls to return indoors, to resume work. Toys are simple, often homemade, dolls stuffed with rags, carved animals, whistles shaped from reeds. They are treasured, not for what they are, but for the small escape they grant. School, when it comes, is no gentle reprieve. In poorer families, many children never go at all. Their labor at home or in fields too valuable to spare. For those who do attend, the experience is harsh, rigid, and often humiliating. The schoolroom is a bare chamber, benches arranged before a teacher's desk, windows let in little light, the air damp with the smell of unwashed bodies. Children crowd together, some barefoot, clothes patched and stiff, hair unkempt. The teacher, armed with a rod or switch, watches for signs of inattention. Lessons are not coaxed with patience, but forced with discipline. Reading and writing are the prized skills, but few achieve mastery. Books are scarce and expensive, often shared between many. The Bible is the most common text, its verses recited line by line, memorized more as catechism than for literacy's sake. Slates and chalk replace paper, letters scratched and erased, written again until hands cramp. A mistake is met with a rap across knuckles, sometimes harsher. The sting is meant to drive the lesson deeper than words alone. Arithmetic is taught through repetition, sums recited aloud, multiplication tables, chanted until voices drone in unison. Understanding matters less than obedience. To hesitate is to invite punishment. To falter is to mark yourself as slow. Many leave school, knowing little beyond their names, a handful of prayers, and the numbers needed to keep accounts at a market stall. For wealthier children, education differs. Tutors are hired, private lessons conducted in warmer rooms with books aplenty. Boys study Latin, rhetoric, mathematics. Girls learn needlework, music, manners, sometimes French. Here learning is not merely survival, but preparation for status. Still discipline remains stern. Tutors wield rulers and scowls with equal force, ensuring diligence through fear as much as encouragement. The physical environment of school is no kinder than the lessons. Ink stains fingers, chalk dust clings to sleeves. The room is cold in winter, breath fogging the air, fingers too numb to hold chalk. In summer, the heat stifles, flies buzz incessantly, and sweat dampens collars. Ventilation is poor, illness spreads quickly, coughs rattling through benches, fevers rising, yet attendance still demanded. Corporal punishment is central. The rod across palms, the birch across backs, ears pulled until they burn. Children flinch at sudden movements, learn quickly to keep eyes forward, mouths shut. Some bear marks for days, bruises hidden beneath sleeves. Parents seldom object. They see discipline as necessary, believing a child uncorrected will grow wild and useless. Yet even amid the severity, sparks of curiosity flicker. A child stares too long at a map, imagining lands beyond their village. Another copies letters with obsessive care, treasuring the shape of words. Stories told in lessons of saints, of kings, of distant battles, plant seeds that grow quietly, long after the switch has fallen silent. Religion threads through everything. Morning prayers begin the day. Psalms are recited between lessons, catechisms drilled into memory. Morality and obedience weigh as heavily as literacy and sums. Children are taught that cleanliness, silence, and deference are marks of virtue. To question is to sin. To obey is to please both God and teacher. Outside of formal schooling, learning continues through imitation. A boy shadows his father at the forge, handed smaller tools to mimic larger tasks. A girl stitches beside her mother, her fingers clumsy at first, steadier with each pass of the needle. Skills are not taught by lecture, but absorbed by doing, work and learning inseparable. Despite the harshness, bonds form. Children whisper to one another during lessons, share scraps of bread at midday, defend each other against the teacher's wrath when courage permits. Friendships grow in the spaces between tasks, laughter breaking briefly through the rigid order of the classroom. Illness frequently interrupts education. Fevers, coughs, stomach fluxes, children vanish from benches for days or weeks, sometimes never returning. Their absence is rarely explained, their seats quietly filled by new faces. Life here is too precarious for permanence. For many, education ends abruptly. By 10 or 12, children are deemed old enough to work full days. Boys are apprenticed, girls bound to service in wealthier homes, both earning wages or debts for their families. What little they learned in school fades quickly, replaced by the practical knowledge of tools, fields, kitchens, and markets. Still a few climb higher. The brightest sons of farmers may earn scholarships, advancing to grammar schools, even universities. Their parents boast of them, proud even if they seldom see them again. For daughters, rare opportunities arise in convents or through wealthy patrons, though expectations of marriage often cut short their studies. Childhood here is not wasted. It cannot be. It is carved into labor, discipline, and necessity. And yet within it all, children still laugh, still dream, still find ways to steal joy from scraps of freedom. A whistle fashioned from a reed, a race down an alley, a story told by firelight. They seize these moments fiercely because they know how quickly they vanish. By the time they reach adulthood, they carry the marks of their upbringing, hands already worn, backs already stiff, minds shaped by rods, slates, and endless chores. They are no longer children, but workers, parents in waiting, inheritors of the same cycles that shaped those before them. Here, childhood is not a sanctuary, it is preparation, forged in hardship, pressed into responsibility, and for most it passes in the blink of an eye. To be a woman in this world is to live within boundaries, both visible and invisible. The boundaries are set by law, by custom, by expectation, and by the daily demands of survival. From the moment a girl is old enough to carry a pail, she is trained to accept the rhythm of duties that will never end. The day begins before dawn. Women rise earlier than men, stoking fires, preparing the simplest of breakfasts, rousing children. The household depends on them to make each morning possible, yet their labor is rarely acknowledged. The tasks are endless: kneading bread, milking animals, tending gardens, sweeping floors, fetching water. Every motion is habitual, repeated hundreds of times, ingrained until it feels less like choice and more like fate. Marriage is the pivot around which a woman's life turns. Some wed in their teens, their futures secured or trapped by the union. A dowry is often exchanged, sometimes meager, sometimes substantial, its value determining not just the match, but the respect afforded afterward. The marriage contract is binding. Vows carry more weight than personal desire. Love may grow, but it is not expected. What matters is alliance, stability, survival. Motherhood follows swiftly. Pregnancy is frequent, its risks immense. Women know the dangers intimately. Blood loss, fever, infants born lifeless or fading within days. Midwives assist, armed with herbs, whispered prayers, and experience rather than medical certainty. Survival is celebrated, but death in childbirth is common enough that families grieve and continue in the same breath. Children may fill the cradle, but not all survive to fill the home. Motherhood itself is labor without rest. Infants are swaddled, rocked, nursed, soothed. Toddlers cling to skirts as mothers stir pots, sweep floors, or mend clothes. Older children are scolded into obedience, taught chores, sent to help at market. Women hold households together with endless patience, even when their own bodies ache from work. For poorer women, work extends far beyond the home. They labor in fields beside husbands, bending to sow, reap, and gather. They haul baskets of grain, spin thread. Many sell goods in markets, bread, eggs, herbs, or simple wares, balancing infants on hips as they call to passers-by. Domestic service is another common path. Young women employed as maids, cooks, or laundresses in wealthier households. Here, hours stretch from dawn to midnight, pay is meager, and respect scarcer still. Wealthier women live differently, but not without constraint. Their homes are larger, their clothing finer, their meals richer, yet their days are still bound by duty. They manage households, overseeing servants, ensuring provisions, directing the endless rhythm of cleaning, cooking, and care. Leisure exists, embroidery, music, reading, social calls, but always within the boundaries of expectation. A lady's worth is measured by grace, piety, and obedience, not independence. Education for women is limited. Daughters of laborers learn what their mothers know: cooking, spinning, mending, nursing. Daughters of gentry may be taught music, languages, or penmanship, But these are not paths to independence, merely tools to make them more appealing wives. Intellectual ambition is often discouraged, curiosity dismissed as unwomanly. Exceptions exist, writers, midwives, healers, but they are rare, remembered precisely because they defied the norm. The law seldom favors women. Property belongs to fathers, then to husbands. Wives cannot easily own, inherit, or control wealth. Widows fare better, sometimes gaining authority over estates, but their power is often challenged by male relatives. Women who remain unmarried are viewed with suspicion, their independence unsettling to a society built on hierarchy. Religion shapes expectations further. Sermons remind women of their place, obedient to husbands, devoted to children, modest in dress and speech. A virtuous woman is silent, industrious, pious. Too much laughter invites criticism. Too much opinion invites censure. Beauty is praised but feared, admired in moderation, condemned if it tempts. Modesty is enforced not just by fabric, but by constant scrutiny. Yet women are not powerless. Within their circles, they wield influence subtly but effectively. They manage households, control food supplies, raise children, and negotiate markets. Their gossip binds communities, spreading news, forging alliances, undermining rivals. Midwives and wise women hold authority in matters of health, their knowledge respected, sometimes feared. Spinsters and widows, though marginalized, often carve out independent roles as healers, traders, or caretakers. Life is not free of rebellion. Some women defy arranged marriages. Some take lovers in secret. Some resist the silence expected of them. Stories circulate of wives who poison cruel husbands, of widows who refuse to remarry, of women who dress as men to work or travel freely. These tales are whispered with both admiration and caution, proof that boundaries can be broken, but not without risk. The dangers women face are constant. Violence within households is seldom questioned, seen as a husband's right. Legal recourse is rare, sympathy rarer. In the streets, harassment is routine, endured in silence. Sexual assault exists, but is often hidden, shame falling on the victim rather than the perpetrator. Women navigate this reality carefully, shaping their behavior to avoid notice, to survive within the narrow paths left to them. Despite these hardships, women find joy. They laugh together while washing clothes, sing while spinning wool, share recipes and remedies, comfort each other in grief. They form networks of support that sustain them through loss and labor alike. Their resilience is quiet but enduring, forged in the small spaces between duty and expectation. By night, when the house is finally still, women rest briefly. Their hands may continue working, mending a tear by firelight, darning socks, rocking a restless infant, but their minds drift. Some dream of better futures for their daughters, some pray for sons to survive infancy, some simply relish the fleeting silence before dawn brings demands anew. Here a woman's life is measured not by freedom, but by endurance. She carries the weight of household, family, community, often unseen, often unpraised. Yet without her, the fragile structure of daily existence would collapse. Though denied recognition, women are the true backbone of this world, their labor as constant and vital as breath itself. To be a man in this world is to live under the constant burden of labor, duty, and expectation. From youth you are taught that your worth lies in strength, in endurance, in the ability to provide and to endure. A man's hands must be rough, his back bent, his voice steady. Weakness is not permitted. Boys are thrust early into the shadow of men's work. By 10 or 12, apprenticeships claim them. Hours at the forge, in workshops, or on farms. They rise before dawn, their shoulders aching from loads too heavy for their size, their palms blistering from tools too large for their grasp. Apprentices are fed less, paid little, scolded often. The cruelty is deliberate, a forging of character through hardship. By the time they reach manhood, the softness of childhood is gone, replaced by calluses, scars, and obedience. Men in the countryside are tied to the soil. Fields dictate their days, seasons dictate their years. They sow, weed, harvest, and repeat, generation after generation. Their labor is visible in furrows, stretching across land, but also in their bodies, stooped posture, sun-browned skin, teeth worn down by grit in bread ground from rough millstones. Farming is less a choice than a sentence. Long hours for little reward, survival always balanced on weather's whim. In towns, trades define male identity. The carpenter's hands are nicked with splinters, his apron dusted with shavings. The mason's back strains beneath stones, his lungs fill slowly with dust. The cooper bends over barrels, hammering iron hoops into place, while the cobbler squints at stitching until eyesight falters. Each craft demands a lifetime. Each passes from father to son, master to apprentice, a chain unbroken by centuries. Men are also expected to protect. The household is theirs to guard, not only from thieves or threats, but from hunger, debt, and shame. A man unable to provide is judged more harshly than one who drinks too much or fights too often. Honor rests, not in kindness, but in ability. Coin earned, food secured, reputation kept intact. Leisure is rare, but when found, it often carries its own rituals. Men gather in alehouses, mugs clutched in weathered hands, voices loud with laughter or anger. Gambling fills the corners, dice rattling in cups, cards slapped on tables, coins disappearing with curses or cheers. Stories are told, some true, many invented, of hunts, battles, loves, and losses. In these spaces, men find brief reprieve from duty, though wives at home curse the coins spent and the staggered steps of return. Disputes are common, tempers quickened by ale or pride. Fists fly, knives flash, voices rise. Fighting is both shameful and respected, a mark of passion, of unwillingness to be dishonored. A scar across the brow, a broken tooth, a twisted finger, these become badges of manhood, evidence that one stood his ground when tested. Religion plays heavily into a man's life, though less through devotion than through expectation. Attendance at church marks respectability. Absence invites suspicion. Men stand in pews, hats in hand, voices rising in hymns, eyes lowered in prayer. Piety is less about personal conviction and more about public proof, evidence that one belongs, that one honors tradition. Marriage is a turning point. A man becomes head of household, responsible for wife, children, and servants, if any. Authority is expected, obedience assumed. Some wield it kindly, others harshly. The law gives them near total control, leaving wives with little recourse. A man who manages well earns respect. One who squanders resources, drinks excessively, or mistreats his family is whispered about, though rarely punished unless debts spill over into scandal. Fatherhood carries its own demands. Sons are trained early, set to work at their father's side, learning tools and trades by imitation. Daughters are guarded more closely, their marriages negotiated as extensions of the father's reputation. Affection exists, but it is often muted, shown less in words than in provision. An extra slice of bread, a toy carved after long hours, a wink across a crowded table. The risks of men's labor are constant. A fall from scaffolding, a slip of the scythe, a misstep in a mine, each can end a life abruptly. Illness, too, strikes men often. Their bodies weakened by toil, lungs scarred by dust or smoke, joints stiff from strain. Many do not live to see old age, their lives spent in the steady grind of work. Those who do survive carry bodies marked by every year. Gnarled fingers, bent spines, rheumy eyes. The military claims some. Wars, rebellions, and levies pull men from fields and workshops, thrusting them into ranks with little training. Marching, drilling, fighting, these replace plows and hammers. Some return with stories, medals, scars. Many never return at all, their absence leaving households adrift, widows scraping by, children orphaned into labor. Yet even amid hardship, pride is found in skill. A smith admires the shine of a finished blade. A farmer surveys a field of ripe grain. A fisherman holds up a net heavy with catch. Men measure themselves not by wealth alone, but by competence. by the tangible proof of labor well done. Their satisfaction is hard won, but it is real. Friendships bind men together as much as labor. A team in the fields shares burdens. A guild of craftsmen protects its members. A tavern table holds laughter that softens long days. Brotherhood is forged in sweat, in danger, in endurance. Though rivalry and conflict exist, so too does solidarity, a recognition that survival is seldom solitary. At night, men collapse into beds or onto straw pallets, muscles aching, minds dulled by fatigue. They rise again at dawn, because there is no alternative. Their lives are defined not by ambition, but by endurance, not by dreams, but by necessity. To be a man here is to carry weight of family, of work, of reputation, and to do so without complaint. It is a role inherited, enforced, and rarely questioned, and though the burdens are heavy, they are borne, because without them, survival itself falters. Faith here is not a quiet, private thing. It shapes the rhythm of weeks, the structure of years, the very meaning of life and death. Religion is woven into everything: meals, marriages, births, illnesses, even the way doors are closed at night. To live without it is almost unimaginable. The week revolves around the Sabbath. On that day, bells toll through the morning mist, calling villagers and townsfolk alike to service. Families walk in procession, shoes polished as best as they can be, garments brushed, children scrubbed more thoroughly than usual. The church stands at the center of the community, its spire rising above crooked roofs, its stones worn by centuries of feet. Inside, the air smells of wax, incense, and damp wood. Light filters through narrow windows, casting patterns on the flagstones. Services are long, prayers are recited aloud, hymns sung in wavering unison, sermons delivered with stern authority. The preacher's voice echoes off walls, urging obedience, condemning vice, promising salvation for the devout and damnation for the sinful. Children fidget on benches, nudged sharply by parents. Men bow heads, some in genuine reverence, others simply enduring. Women clasp hands, whispering petitions for health, for safe childbirth, for food enough to last the winter. Beyond Sundays, the church marks every passage of life. Infants are baptized, water sprinkled on their brows, names recorded in registers that outlast memory. Marriages are sanctified, vows spoken before God and neighbors, sealed not just by contract but by blessing. Death, too, belongs to the church. Bells toll again, prayers are intoned, and bodies are laid in consecrated ground, their souls commended to eternity. Festivals break the monotony of toil. Saints' days, holy days, feasts, each brings processions through the streets, banners unfurled, candles carried in trembling hands. Songs rise, food is shared, ale flows more freely than usual. For a few hours or days, work pauses, laughter returns, and life feels momentarily abundant. Yet even these celebrations carry weight, reminders of duty, of the saints who suffered, of the God who watches always. Superstition weaves itself through faith. Crosses are traced on loaves before baking, prayers whispered before sowing seeds, charms blessed by priests, hung in cottages to ward off illness. Holy water is sprinkled not only in churches, but on doorways, livestock, and even tools, in hopes of protection. For many, the line between religion and magic is blurred, both seen as weapons against the world's endless uncertainties. Confession and repentance are central. Guilt is heavy here, sin unavoidable. Men confess anger, women confess envy, children confess disobedience. The priest listens, absolves, prescribes prayers or penance. Fear of hellfire lingers always in the background, painted vividly in sermons, etched into stained glass, carved into stone. Eternal damnation is no abstraction. It is an ever-present shadow, keeping people obedient to both God and earthly authority. Religious authority extends beyond worship. The church records births, marriages, and deaths, controlling memory itself. It dictates morality, defining which acts are acceptable, which condemned. To speak against doctrine is dangerous, marking one as heretic, rebel, or fool. Priests and ministers wield power not through armies, but through words. their influence shaping laws, customs, and private lives alike. Women find particular solace in devotion. Saints' lives are read with awe, rosaries fingered during endless chores, prayers whispered at cradles and bedsides. Faith offers a space where endurance feels meaningful, where suffering is framed as sacrifice, where obedience becomes virtue. For men, religion reinforces authority, head of household, guardian of morality, model of discipline. Each gender finds in faith both burden and justification. Children are steeped in belief from birth. Prayers are taught before they can read, catechisms memorized by rote. Fear of sin curbs mischief. Stories of saints inspire awe or dread. Heaven and hell are as real as earth and sky, their images painted so vividly in words and art that doubt rarely takes root. To stray from faith is to stray from family, from community, from safety itself. Pilgrimages still occur, though not always long journeys. Local shrines draw the sick, the desperate, the grateful. People kneel before relics, a bone, a scrap of cloth, a splinter of wood, believing in their power to heal or bless. Offerings are left, coins, candles, even food, each a small act of trust that divine favor might be secured. At times, fear of God deepens into terror. Plagues, famines, storms, all are interpreted as judgment. Communities scour themselves for hidden sins, scapegoats sought, confessions wrung out of the accused. Witches are whispered about, demons feared, visions debated. Faith offers comfort, but it also offers explanations that demand punishment. Fires burn, trials are held, and belief itself becomes weapon. And yet, amid stern sermons and fearful superstitions, faith also provides hope. It promises that suffering has meaning, that hardship is not random but part of a divine plan. It assures the poor that their hunger will be rewarded in heaven, that their labor is seen, their tears counted. It reminds the grieving that lost children rest in paradise, that loved ones gone too soon are not truly gone forever. Religion here is not optional. It is not a matter of personal choice or private belief. It is the spine of society, binding neighbors together, shaping laws, dictating morals. Even those who doubt in secret bow their heads in public, unwilling to risk suspicion. Faith is as necessary as bread, as constant as the turning of seasons. At night, when candles gutter low, prayers are murmured once more. Some pray with fervor, others by rote, lips moving out of habit. The words rise into silence, uncertain whether they are heard, but certain that without them, life itself would feel unbearable. Because here, belief is not just about God. It is about survival, about making sense of a world that so often seems cruel, chaotic, and indifferent. Religion weaves order into disorder, meaning into suffering, hope into despair. Without it, the darkness would be absolute. When the day ends, when work slows, when the light fades from the sky, you are left with yourself, and with the weight of everything endured. It is not a weight you set aside easily. It clings to you as surely as the soot on your clothes, the calluses on your hands, the aches in your bones. Life here is not something lived lightly. It presses, constantly, in ways seen and unseen. Evenings are brief, carved from the labor of the day. The hearth is stirred back to life, simple meals reheated, or stews simmered until they thicken. Families gather around wooden tables, bowls in hand, voices low. Children squabble quietly until silenced. Adults speak of weather, of prices, of rumors carried from the market. Candles are costly, firewood scarce, so darkness creeps in early. Shadows claim corners, rooms shrink to the circle of firelight. Leisure is modest, a song sung while mending, a tale told by a weary elder, a game of dice, played with pebbles on the floor. Some nights laughter rises, warming the room as much as the flames. Other nights, silence dominates, each person too tired to do more than chew and stare into the fire. The luxury of choice, to read, to write, to play, is reserved for the few. For most, the only indulgence is a moment's rest before sleep claims them. Night itself carries its own hazards. Streets grow dangerous once darkness falls, lanterns too rare to dispel the gloom. Thieves and drunkards wander, shadows conceal more than light reveals. Families bolt doors, slide bars into place, murmur prayers for safety. Beyond the walls of the house, the world belongs to uncertainty. Within, the household becomes a fortress of sorts, fragile though it may be. Sleep is not always peace. Beds are shared, bodies pressed close for warmth, straw pallets alive with vermin. Dreams are broken by coughs, by the wail of infants, by the howl of dogs, or the toll of bells marking death in the night. Some wake with cramps in their stomachs, the result of spoiled food. Others toss with fevers that families pray will fade by morning. To wake alive is never guaranteed. And yet, despite hardship, life is lived. The next morning comes, and the cycle begins again. Clothes are pulled on, bread is broken, tools are lifted, duties resumed. No one speaks of endurance, because endurance is not optional. It is simply what must be done. Survival is not a triumph here. It is the baseline, the quiet victory repeated each day. Children grow into this rhythm quickly, learning by watching, by listening, by doing. Their games imitate labor. Boys pretend to plow with sticks. Girls cradle dolls wrapped in rags, mimicking motherhood. They absorb not just tasks but expectations, the sense that life is labor, duty, and repetition. By the time they are grown, the cycle has already claimed them. Men and women carry different burdens, but both are heavy. Men bear the outward expectation of strength, of provision, of authority. Women hold households together in silence, their work unending, their sacrifices often unseen. Neither role is easily escaped. Both are enforced by law, by church, by community, by need. And yet, within those confines, people still find ways to assert themselves, to laugh, to resist, to dream of something more. Faith provides a language for all of this. The church reminds people that suffering has meaning, that toil and hunger will be rewarded, that death is not the end, but a passage. Whether believed with conviction or followed out of fear, it offers a framework that makes sense of what would otherwise feel unbearable. To bow the head in prayer is not just devotion, it is survival of the spirit. Festivals, too, punctuate the grind. A marriage brings music, a baptism laughter, a feast brief abundance. These moments shine brighter precisely because they are rare. People cling to them, recalling them in the depths of winter or in times of illness, using memory as fuel for endurance. But always, the backdrop is fragility. Death is common, grief familiar, loss woven into the fabric of life. Parents bury children, children bury parents, siblings are lost to war, famine, or disease. And yet, the living continue. They mourn, they pray, they adapt. Survival is not about escaping death, but about carrying on in its shadow. What defines this world most is not its hardship, but the way people endure it. They adapt to dirt, to hunger, to sickness, to constraint. They bend beneath burdens, but rarely break. Their lives are not measured in comfort, but in resilience, in the ability to rise each morning, despite the knowledge that tomorrow will be no easier. And perhaps that is the truest measure of humanity here: persistence. In the face of endless labor, constant risk, and fleeting joys, people persist. They laugh when they can. They cling to each other when they must. They hold on to faith, to hope, to small rituals that make life bearable. As the fire burns low and the last voices fall silent, you lie down on straw, listening to the quiet creak of the house settling around you. Outside, the night stretches vast and uncertain. Inside, you close your eyes, knowing that when morning comes, the cycle will begin anew. And you realize this is the texture of life here. Not grand battles or heroic tales, but the endless, ordinary persistence of people who endure. You've now walked a day in this world, felt its weight, its grit, its hunger, its endurance. The past is not distant, it lives beneath our feet, in our traditions, in the echoes of how ordinary people survived. If this glimpse has stirred something in you, curiosity, or even gratitude for the life you lead now, then let's keep journeying together. Subscribe to our channel, share it with others, and step deeper with me into the lives of those who came before us. Their stories are not finished. They wait to be remembered, retold and reimagined. Because history is not only about kings and battles, it's about people. People like you. People like me. People who endured.